Okay, so being on or about 6:30, I'm going to bring this regular meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission to order, February 22nd, 2021. It should be noted that obviously we're doing this remotely through the Zoom technology. Due to the state of emergency initiated March 12, 2020 by Governor Baker in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting will be recorded by both audio and video. Applicants will be given an opportunity to take control of the screen and present documents as needed, or else someone in the staff or I can present them for them. Also, please note on April 6, 2020, the Commission delegated signature authority to Andrea Langhauser, Environmental Planner, Assistant Planning Director, for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. So I think that's about that. Just before we get started, Andrea, do we know what we're doing with 34 Roundtable? I don't want anybody who's here for that to stick around if we're going to continue that.
Right. There's no new information was submitted this morning, so he's expecting a continuance.
Okay, so for anybody who might be on the call who's waiting for 34 Roundtable Road, it's our fourth hearing. It is likely that is to be continued. That's the expectation at this point, given that we are waiting on some additional information. So I just wanted you to know about that, so you didn't wait around for an hour to get to there.
And that'll be the next meeting, March 8th, probably?
That will probably be the next meeting, March 8th, according to Environmental Planner, Assistant Planning Director, Andrea Langhauser. Oh man, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
So first up is 231 Center Street. This is a notice of intent to upgrade a single-family residential septic.
How we doing, guys? Can you hear me?
Yep, Peter, you're loud and clear.
Awesome. I'll share my screen. If someone could just confirm you see the plan.
All set.
Yeah.
All right. For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group, representing the homeowner at 231 Center Street for a repair of a failed septic system. Quick overview of the property. We have a bordering vegetated wetland line associated with a drainage and a stream to the southern portion of the property. The 50-foot wetland buffer line cuts more or less along the existing tree line to the south of the project. Our proposal is to install a 1,500 gallon septic tank and a 1,000 gallon pump chamber and pump up to a 14 by 33 foot leaching bed. The components are all going in existing lawn area. There's a little bit of change in grading, mostly to help with the surface water impacts and keep anything flowing back to the house. This is a pretty straightforward project. We've proposed erosion control starting at the house corner to the north and wrapping around the entire project. We've shown a soil stockpile area between the existing porch and the proposed leaching. We show conservation posts along the existing tree line. We got 4 of those proposed to the south with our standard details shown on the plan. Somewhere, should be here. But so 4 conservation posts, straw wattle check dams set at the edge of the driveway, which is going to be the site access. We're also proposing silt sacks in the catch basins off-site of the project to contain any sediment if it makes it that way. That's basically my rundown. I'll take any questions from the commission now.
So,
can I just say that the abutters were notified?
thank you. Do we have a DEP number on this?
Just checked.
Oh my. Okay, so first question for me is the only question I have. I will say, just as a comment, before I get to my question, is that this stream is fascinating to me. I just have to say, and the fact that it goes underneath this street, and it's probably been there forever, is amazing to me. Just absolutely amazing. It's just, I was fascinated by it, to be quite honest. It's probably the most fascinating thing I saw on Saturday, if you can believe that. So these are the things I get excited about, Peter. So
that's a big day.
yeah, I know. Stomping around the snow to see a stream. So the question I have is about the straw bale check dams. What's the purpose of that? What are you trying to accomplish there, and is that going to accomplish it?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal, as with the silt sacks in the catch basin, we're trying to grab any sediment that may get into Center Street, you know, from truck access and stuff. The straw bales would act as almost an extension of the erosion control out into the street to grab anything that might make it onto the road. The western side of Center Street kind of crowns off, and the surface flow does make its way directly to the stream, whereas the eastern portion is directed in a catch basin, I'm sure ultimately making it into the same stream. So yeah, it's just a different concept for the erosion control, but mostly to protect the gutter line, the edge of pavement from any migrating sediment.
So how do we know that that's going to be sufficient for what you expect to happen? You know, I assume that the truck access is through that driveway and up this side of the house.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, you can see by the plan that the whole yard pretty much slopes from the north to the south. So obviously we've totally encompassed everything around that portion. I mean, to answer the question, I mean, it's kind of a common practice. It's worked before, it should work again. You know, the only other thing I could see us doing is maybe just extending the erosion control to the south a little bit more to kind of protect the little bump out in the driveway. But if you guys have something else in mind, that would, you know, an alternative.
No, one quick question.
Just a second, Charlie. I'll
Okay.
recognize you in a sec. So how much material do you believe is going to end up? I mean, this is just really going to be if there's sort of rain in the middle of the day, is probably going to push the material down, right? I mean, that's.
Let me see. Yeah, it looks like it's only about a 2-foot removal to build the new septic system. So compared to some that we see, that there's not a huge amount of material being brought in and out. Obviously, we're going to have excavation for the tanks. You know, it depends what they get for material. Sometimes they'll use that just to backfill around the site. But about two feet of fills, 2 feet is going to be removed from the leaching area, and then it looks like the grade will be brought up about 2 feet in the southern portion. So.
Okay, so I know Charlie had a comment to make. Charlie?
Sure.
Yeah. The paved driveway, which way does that pitch?
It slopes from the house towards the southeast, or the bottom right of the plan.
Into the, where you've got the silt sock.
Yes, everything pretty much pitches towards the erosion control,
Okay.
and then anything on the street would, you know, kind of flow down the edge of the driveway and get picked up at the edge of the road.
And there was this proposed soil stockpile area. That whole area in there, that's all lawn, right? All the way to the.
Yep. Yeah, the existing tree line falls outside of our work limit.
Be honest with you.
We're not proposing any tree removal, and just minor grading. It's all gonna be going back to lawn when it's done.
To be honest with you, I mean, the hay bales, I think are a good idea, but I kind of think it's overkill because the way that runs, and you get lawn, which is gonna grab a lot of, silt, anything that's gonna go through. Then you get the driveway, if it hits the driveway, it's gonna run and slam into the, your erosion control anyway, so I think you're all set.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? Any public comment for 231 Center? Just raise your hand or put something in the Q&A or chat. Okay, so seeing none, so we're up against the no DEP number here, Peter. And I think we've taken the practice that we can't issue a decision without the DEP number.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to March 8th, but unless things change, I don't anticipate any difficulties.
Okay.
And I think on March 8th, we'll probably try and group everything together so we don't, we'll do our best to help you, okay?
Sure, thank you.
Well, have we ever approved subject to obtaining the DEP and not given the,
I will say that I don't think that that we've done that in my time, almost 4 years.
Andrea?
Rory and I have come on at pretty much the same time, and I've been strongly not recommending it because occasionally the applicant the notice of intent might have gotten lost in the mail, never got to DEP. A file, the application check got sent to the wrong place.
Yep.
So, there's all sorts of stupid things that can happen.
Yeah,
But if you close the hearing, then it's on us to act within 21 days. Right. And if they should actually see something that they wanted us to comment on, we'd have to reopen the meeting to address it.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to continue 231 Center Street to March 8th.
Second. Bale, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Melo, aye.
Spadia, aye.
John,
Yes.
Need a vote from you, John. 231 Center Street. Motion to continue. Okay, so John posted in the chat that he said yes, so I guess we'll record that as a yes. So 5-0. Okay. The next up is 82 R. Lincoln Street. This is a continued hearing for a notice of intent for a single-family house with associated utilities and grading.
I'm bringing up George, David, and Claire Hugelboom.
Okay, great. Dave, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Dave Cleonard here for 82R Lincoln Street. This is an ongoing project. If I can share my screen, I have everything that has been revised on the plans, and then we can go to some questions. So are my plans up for your view?
We see Autodesk up, but you got to bring up a specific plan. Yep.
Okay. So these are, this is the AutoCAD drawing, and it's the revised plans are dated 2/10/2021, and basically details, labels, disturbed area notes have been added to the plans based on our last conversation. We did not have the disturbed areas inside all the buffer zones, so I provided them here. The total disturbance, including street grading, is 29,600. This is less than 1 acre which at that threshold, you would require it would require a general discharge permit clearing 1 acre or more. So we're under that threshold. The disturbance within the 50-foot buffer is, of course, the 1,790 for the isolated wetland. The disturbance within the 100-foot buffer of an isolated wetland is 14,000 square feet. And this includes the whole project. This is the driveway, the house, the septic, and the access road. I give you the disturbance within the 100-foot buffer to an existing wetland line. That's the wetland offsite. That's very little because it only cuts out the corner of the lot. The disturbance within the 100-foot buffer to the protected resource area of a potential vernal pool is 8,730 square feet, and the disturbance within the 200-foot buffer protected resource area is 22,700. So the 200-foot buffer almost encompasses the whole project, except for a little bit of the lot and the access road to the potential vernal pool.
I just would like to make a clarification at that point that he has correctly identified, if you go to the existing conditions, he correctly identified the vernal pool boundary as, if you can show us the vernal pool, there's 100, there's the vernal pool. This is the mean high water line inside the BVW. So this line here, the first blue line you see about coincidental with the 50-foot buffer zone, that's the vernal pool boundary. So so that's a resource area, and then the first 100 feet is our buffer zone. There is no second 100 feet in jurisdiction.
Okay, I did do a 200-foot buffer, but
Yeah, people get confused.
okay, great. That actually works out a little bit. So going on from there, just a few of the additions that we did. I added a concrete block retaining wall. This retaining wall won't be 2 blocks high. It's only going to be a block high. It's not going to be very high, maybe a foot and a half above grade. And that retaining wall is right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to change the grade drastically, but it does help us with the 3-to-1 slope. It brings us better than 6 feet further away from the wetlands by putting in this retaining wall. Yeah, so I did relabel the labels, and I think that was it for the changes to the plan. We did get a hold of this abutter, Mr. Nolan, and I have a email here from him stating that he does not want to rip up his driveway for an equalizer pipe, as it may very well inundate his property with more water due to the existing elevations. Putting in a pipe would almost be level with the elevations the way they are, meaning that any storage of surface water would inundate his property. So he emailed us back, and this is the email that you have on through Permitize.
Okay.
So we did get a hold of Mr. Nolan, and that was his response. And I think that was one of the things that Andrea wanted us to do before we move forward on the project. So those are the only changes to the plans as of today. Minor changes. There was a...
Dave, just give me 1 second, okay? Just as a point of information here, Charlie, you're not eligible to participate in this?
I was going to ask that question, right, because this is a continuance, right?
Yeah, we've had about 3 or 4 hearings on this.
You know, I'm going to have to recuse myself. I was going to ask that question myself.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Right. So the other thing that we had changed was we added, we contacted LEC, and Claire's here from LEC to answer any questions you may have. And under the brief, we added to the benefit of the public that George Collins, the proprietor of Collins Engineering, has signed an agreement for LEC to go in April and determine whether or not the vernal pool is a vernal pool and to certify it, if so, as a vernal pool. We also have permission from the abutter, which the vernal pool is on, the land that is on. So we have both agreements that that we will pay for LEC to determine this, and we do have an agreement with the abutters for us to go onto their property and determine whether or not it is a vernal pool.
Great.
So that has been added to the brief as a public good.
Yep.
So those are the changes, and I believe George is here and Claire is here for if you have any questions concerning the contract for the vernal pool or the vernal pool itself. Claire is also here. She was instrumental in writing as the soil scientist the first report on the vernal pool.
So just a couple of questions here from my perspective. The location of the septic is dictated by the perk test, right? I mean, that's really the only place you got a satisfactory test.
That is correct.
Okay. So I mean, alternative locations there isn't one. So the other thing is, what is the plan for just regular lawn on this site? What are we proposing for a lawn area?
The lawn area is pretty much the rest of the frontage here and all the way around to the back is all going to be lawn. And I believe that I have a swap plan, which basically is for sediment control and for runoff. Anything that's not going to be stabilized right away must be semi or temporarily stabilized. And this is something that's usually required on a NEPTE's general discharge permit, but I put it here because in the construction sequences, it does give direction to the contractor to stabilize the site as he's constructing it. But the lawn area is going to be the whole back of the yard.
So to the 186 line?
Right to the 183 line, right to the sill fence. So the whole back of the yard, right to the sill fence will be lawn. And right from the stone wall all the way down to the proposed driveway, including over the septic system, will be lawn.
Okay. And to the left of the driveway?
To the left of the driveway will all be loamed and seeded with grass all the way up to the sill fence, yes.
Okay.
Except for the riprap areas.
Okay, so is there some discussion here? Like, I mean, I'd like to decrease the amount of lawn area as much as possible, at the same time giving somebody some backyard, because I mean, this isn't going to be a big backyard at all, but you know, at the same time, I don't know how much usable lawn is beyond 186 there in the back, because you've got it dropping off 4 feet, you know, 3.5 feet in a short period of time there. I don't know how much that is really usable. So I'm just trying to sort of keep as much natural vegetation as possible. I mean, I know that's going to get disturbed, and we'd have to probably seed it with some sort of natural native species seed. But I'm just tossing that out there as a possibility.
You know, there's such a thing as a wetland mix.
Yeah.
We certainly could use that wetland mix along the side of the driveway, as it's really not going to be maintained. It's not like a lawn area that they're going to want to have to mow all the time. We could certainly take this from the side of the house, not really where the 3-to-1 slopes are, but the side of the driveway all the way out to this retaining wall. We could do a nice wetland mix that would fit in there.
Okay, well, that's something to consider then.
Hi, this is George Collins. How are you?
Hi, George.
You know, also what might actually be better is actually what we call an upland meadow mix. Rather, you know, because it's an upland, there's a wetland meadow mix, an upland meadow mix that might do a little bit better than, but just food for thought.
Yeah,
Okay. Sounds good. So just 1 second, Carol. So I want to go over the public interest in the waiver, and then we'll get to the waiver. I know Carol has a question about the waiver. So from our perspective, I'm just trying to summarize this so that when we go to vote on this, we're all on the same page. So you are going to, in April of this year, attempt to certify that potential vernal pool. If it's certifiable, you'll file the paperwork with Natural Heritage and get it certified. You have permission to do so. You have a contract to do so. We're going to improve that isolated wetlands with all that additional plantings and mitigation that you're doing there. The square footage there is around 4,000 square feet, right?
that's correct.
Okay. So, and then the third thing that I understand it to be is improving the safety conditions, the public safety conditions for Reardon Way, with the road improvements as well as the turnaround for the any emergency vehicles.
That's correct.
Okay, so did I miss anything, or is that a summary of what we consider to be the public interest?
That's a good that's a good summary of the public interest. You know, I'm not sure if it matters or not, but we are using best management practices, which is a public interest to groundwater.
Yeah.
And that's also mentioned in the report.
Yeah, I think you're probably improving the groundwater treatment here
Yep.
off of the roadway too. Yes, I agree with you. So that is something we should keep in mind as well. I think the only question here, so I think that the biggest challenge we have, and it's one we've talked about, and we've talked about multiple times here, and I know we've got Claire from LEC here who might be able to answer some questions we might have about it, is potential impacts to that potential vernal pool. And I know in the written report, it was described as no significant adverse impacts are expected. And so from my perspective, I think we've gotten to a point where that we need to make the decision of whether or not that's sufficient or not. So Carol, you had your hand raised?
Sure, thank you, Rory. Just before I forget, I'd like to circle back. We were talking about the lawn. I think, was it Dave, you were talking about runoff. I was wondering, before we even get to the runoff, what if we could spec the soil for the lawn to be something that has approximately as much organic matter, or, you know, an amount more than the typical loam that a typical new lawn would have, so that it can soak up, has the potential to soak up more of the water before it runs off.
You know, that's a good idea. We can actually do that. I think that there may even be material on site. What I'm proposing here for this wetland replication area is that we go down to within a foot. This would be hand dug, probably, most likely, because we don't have to go down too deep for the plantings. And we'll have excess material here as we plant the plantings, that we can actually put into a loom that we put along this driveway. It would be very similar to the material that's existing now, and whatever else that the commission may advise us on.
Right, that would be great to reuse materials that are already there. So do you think, I mean, it depends on if you want to plant turf grasses, or have you thought about something like a Pennsylvania sedge? That's kind of lawn-like and would need to be mowed only once a year.
That would be, you know, I mean, that is definitely doable. I mean, we could definitely, it would be nice to have something there that would grow very slowly, so that the least amount of impact for maintenance per year is done. What was it called, the Pennsylvania sedge?
Yeah, I mean, there's another, I mean, I'm not quite sure how much sunlight those areas get, but there's another sedge that does better in conditions with more sun. I'm not recalling that right now.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of sun there.
Yeah, this would be more of a shaded area.
Yeah.
There are trees, thickly wooded trees on this side of the stone wall, and there are thickly wooded trees all throughout here. So we're kind of in between
you know, sometimes if you go out hiking at Borderland along some of those trails, there's a lot of Pennsylvania sedge there. Other sedges too. So there's that. Thank you. So as far as wildlife, Claire, thank you very much for appearing out of nowhere tonight. And I apologize for, you know, not asking some of my questions until, you know, very far into this process. As a volunteer, I'm doing the best I can, and I can't always read my notes. So thank you. Speaking of my notes. So I do have some wildlife questions and some hydrology questions. Claire, as we know, in your peer review, page 4, you said the vernal pool species will continue to be able to migrate across the proposed driveway and yard to utilize nearby year-round habitat. So I was sniffing around a bit. From Penn State, we have the preference of spotted salamanders for hidden microhabitats is their primary defense mechanism against predation. They also have a toxin that comes out from their tails. And given that so I'm off the Penn State now, but given that their primary defense is basically leaf litter and vernal pools, what's the evidence that spotted salamanders, and actually wood frogs, are not subject to greater predation, loss of feeding opportunities? Like if you're a salamander in leaf litter, you can kind of eat anytime. Dehydration, exhaustion, injury, and death from everyday human activities, and under increased stress levels when they're having to migrate across exposed driveway and yard areas. And their predators include, from Penn State, we have chipmunks, snakes, squirrels, raccoons, skunks, turtles, and opossums. And from Connecticut, we have snakes, birds, fish, and mammals. So, and to pile on to that, we have on page, in your summary on page 5, although the proposed disturbance will not result in a significant adverse effect to the VP species, and the sentence goes on. So I disagree with your assertion that there will be no significant adverse effects, because first of all, no means no. And second, the state and town regs define significant as plays a role. So if leaf litter plays a role as a defense mechanism, that would by definition be significant, at least by my thinking. And adverse effects are not neutral effects or positive effects, they're negative effects. So what I'm wondering is this an adverse effect that can or cannot be avoided by redesign, mitigation, or conditioning? There you have it, Claire.
Well, to sort of touch on the first point that you bring up regarding the vernal pool species and their ability to migrate across the driveway and the yard, that particular comment, we are sort of putting it into context in the fact that it is a small impact in comparison to something like a large multi-unit development, or if you consider a large commonly traveled roadway. So ultimately having this small impact or this small level of development within the larger landscape is ultimately de minimis and not a significant impact to the larger population. Generally, when we are doing these kinds of habitat evaluations, we are taking into context the overall landscape and the current land use of that landscape. And we are taking into consideration the greater population. So while there may be an impact to individual, the question ultimately is, would this project result in a significant impact to the population, to the wildlife population, and would it substantially reduce the capacity of that resource area, or in this case, the buffer zone to the vernal pool habitat? Does it really substantially reduce this area to continue to provide the important wildlife habitat functions that it can? And our conclusion as a result of reviewing the project as proposed at that time and the surrounding landscape is that the development of this project ultimately would not result in a significant adverse impact to the vernal pool species, so to any species that are assumed to utilize that potential vernal pool, and or the vernal pool habitat to continue to provide the wildlife habitat functions, because they are going to be continued to be provided elsewhere in the landscape. And as far as just the individual definition of the words involved in a significant adverse effect, I think in the spirit of the Wetlands Protection Act, it's important to remember that significant adverse effects are also taking into consideration a cumulative impact and avoidance, minimization, and mitigation. And that's something that should be taken into account when thinking about if an activity would result in a significant adverse impact or not.
Okay, anything else? So you're saying the same thing about the wood frogs?
Yes, without having done a vernal pool study and understanding exactly the amphibians that are utilizing that vernal pool, and without having seen any direct evidence during the wildlife habitat evaluate or the site visit I did to prepare this report, our review and our overall conclusion is encompassing any assumed vernal pool species that would utilize that habitat. So that would include the frogs.
Okay, thank you. So speaking of cumulative impacts, I'm looking at Town Regulation 503-2A-2C, and it talks about I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay, sorry, 227A. The commission shall take into account the cumulative adverse effects of loss, degradation, isolation, and replication of protected resource areas throughout the town, resulting from past activities permitted and exempt and foreseeable future activities. So we have a responsibility to not just look at applications that come before us on individual basis, but to see the impacts on the whole town. And at the moment, at least, I see this application as being, death by 1,000 cuts. This is one of those cuts.
What's the citation again, please?
227-7A.
Okay.
Claire, how is this not death by 1,000 cuts?
Just to try to stay within the context of our scope of review with the previous review that we did, I would just like to note that there is conservation land, and there is conservation land that provides viable upland habitat and wetland habitat. And in looking in the grander landscape, this is quite possibly the last piece of developable land in this particular location. And yeah, just to refer back to the report we put together, with the development of this project, there still remains to be plenty of viable upland overwintering habitat that would be provided to wildlife species that would likely utilize that vernal pool.
So Andrea, do you have a sense, and I know we looked at it at one of the earlier meetings, one of the first meetings, the Friends Crossing property that runs west of here, which is, I don't even know if, yeah, I mean, so that even, I don't know how many acres that is. It's well north of 10, I think.
Well north of 10. And if we're not looking at the aerial photography, your locus, David, might give us a little more context. In addition to, and Carol probably can speak to this even better than me, but we're in the easterly corner of the Friends Crossing, but then it extends to the west with an extensive wetland area through here all the way, and then it connects over to that's Clifford Grant.
Yeah, right, I see that.
Okay. Any other questions, Carol?
Yes, thank you.
I just don't want to cover the same ground over and over again, though. Just
Sure.
so if we can keep this on point.
Sure, thank you. So regarding stormwater and the vernal pool, I know the vernal pool is not on the property of the application, but it is right nearby. And I don't, some would say that it's exempt from regulation, but we do have a provision that says that in the judgment of the commission, if an activity would have a result, let's see, any proposed activity outside a resource area subject to protection shall not be subject to regulation unless, in the judgment of the commission, the activity may result or has resulted in the removing, filling, altering, dredging, or building upon a resource area subject to protection. So I feel like we do have jurisdiction over this vernal pool. That's just my one vote. And so what I'm wondering is, how is the hydrology of the current proposal, how does it affect the vernal pool?
Dave.
The flow to the vernal pool.
I think I can take this one. The hydrology in the existing conditions, the area that we have developed here flows towards the isolated wetland. And in the proposed condition, it flows towards. So anything developed is not flowing towards the vernal pool. It's flowing away from the vernal pool towards the isolated wetland. And what we're doing is we're basically removing total suspended solids and pushing cleaner stormwater runoff into this isolated wetland area. Right now, there's water flowing from the existing access road that's untreated, flowing directly into the isolated wetlands. We'll treat it through the stone trench. We'll have clean runoff coming, both being recharged from the roof and discharge, overflow discharge, which will be very clean runoff towards the wetland, towards the replication area. And this is all going to help the replication area thrive as far as maintaining water supplies. So basically, we're not increasing or decreasing or adding or subtracting anything that is flowing to the vernal pool right now.
Great, good to know, thank you. Right, that's it for me, thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Questions? Any public comment for 82R Lincoln Street? Seeing none. Dave, I assume we want to close?
Yeah, if George Collins concurs, then we will.
Throw me under the bus. Yes. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
So Dave, throwing me under the bus, thank you. I'm only kidding. Yes, I think I'm comfortable closing the public hearing.
Okay.
I completely understand the commission has their job to do, and Easton has a substantial, the bylaw is very thorough. But I do feel like we've done a substantial amount of due diligence here. And, we're just trying to work in the best interest of our client and hopefully while fulfilling the intent of the bylaw and state regulation. So at this point, I do believe I'm comfortable closing the public hearing.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a separate motion this time, just a motion to close the hearing.
Lundin, second.
Roll call vote to close the hearing. Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay, so now that the hearing's closed, let's make a motion to issue a permit for work and order conditions. We're gonna make a motion, issue a permit for work and order conditions, noting the conditions noted in the staff report, which are sustainable lawn practices, the roof, road, and driveway long-term maintenance inspection, annual inspection, the vernal pool studies to be done this spring, buffer zone planting monitoring and report submission. This is all covered in the staff notes. Erosion controls as noted. Additional condition is that on the northerly side of the driveway, extending around to the corner of the turn-in on the driveway, we're going to do two things. We're going to use, to the extent practicable, relocate some of the soil from the wetland mitigation that's happening in the isolated vegetated wetland to this area to enhance the soil. And at the applicant's discretion, use either a wetland mix, an upland meadow mix, or a Pennsylvania sedge in this area north of the driveway, extending easterly along the entire side of the property.
And direct flow away from the vernal pool.
Okay, so to amend that, to include ensure runoff to away from the vernal pool towards the isolated vegetated wetland.
Thomas, second.
Okay, roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, abstain.
Speedy, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay, so 3-0-1. Okay, Dave, George, thank you. Claire, appreciate your help as well.
Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing and have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
So next up is 111 Washington Street. This is a continued hearing from notice of intent for an upgrade of a septic system as well as the construction of a garage. Do we have the DEP on this? This has been out there for a while.
Yeah,
Okay, it's a TBD on the agenda. So
let's see. I think it's on my staff report though.
okay, as long as we have it, yeah, it's on the staff report, so we're good. Oh,
Excuse me, Roy, should I be recusing myself from this one too, I think?
This one is
were you here last meeting?
it started last meeting.
Oh, it just started last meeting, I'm sorry, okay, I'm good,
Yeah, you're good for this one, I think.
okay.
Yeah, we have a DEP number on this, so we'll do that. Peter, you're back up.
Back, still here. Yeah, let me share the plan with you.
Great.
You don't see it, do you? It's telling me it's paused, but I don't know why.
No, I don't see it.
Does someone have to allow that to be shared?
You shared screen. Maybe,
You wanna try again, Peter?
Sure. Let's see.
There we go.
Awesome. All right, so we're revisiting this one. For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group, representing the owner here. As mentioned, this is relative to a notice of intent for a repair of an existing septic system and the construction of a 10,000 or 1,050 foot garage. Just to recap, at the last meeting, the commission, we discussed some alternative options. Sounded like everyone was okay with the septic system, but the garage was really the point of contention. A couple options were discussed, including locating the proposed garage structure out front. Right away, that's impractical. It blocks the existing driveway access, the existing building entrances, and access to the existing garage. The only other location would be out front, but you're really not benefiting anything else. I mean, you're blocking off the rest of the site. You're not really increasing the distance to the resource area at all. So a couple of changes we come up with to make this a little less impactful on the abutting wetland resources. I'll start with the square footage for the building. Off the bat, we had proposed an area to be converted from gravel parking to a lawn area. Our new proposal actually meets a 1-to-1 exchange for proposed garage square footage as well as gravel to be replaced with the upland meadow mix. So essentially the change we're proposing is to let the area to the north of the existing garage essentially return back to a vegetated, more natural condition. It is current gravel driveway, so really anything we do from there is going to be a plus. So we have an area proposed in the back here, as well as taking a strip of gravel and extending the lawn area as an existing lawn, snow drainage swale area. So we came up with a bit more area to match what we're proposing. Just like to reiterate that right off the bat, we're not increasing any impervious area. So this proposed garage is going on existing gravel parking, which as far as drainage goes, has similar to impervious drainage characteristics. So it's our intent to go above and beyond just replacing that with, you know, more impervious and getting some meadow grasses going in here. Additionally, we've kind of amped up the planting plan. We're proposing some bushes along the rear of the building and replanting some oak trees as a mitigation for some of the tree removal that's going to be happening with the septic system. The oak trees can grow large, so obviously we're not putting them right up near the building. We feel that the toe of the slope around the septic system is an appropriate area for those. Then we'll have some shrubs and then fading into an upland meadow mix along the northern portion of the parking. Couple other changes, and we've proposed conservation posts around pretty much the proposed limit of work. We have started in this bottom corner, they go right up around the property. This one will be blocking off the proposed meadow mix, as well as the 3 going back up to Washington Street. Erosion control is proposed around the entire project, including the proposed drainage areas and all of our plantings, ending back up at the garage. As mentioned in the last meeting, we do have underground infiltration to handle the proposed roof runoff. That's going to drain out into a discharge area shown by the blue here, and ultimately through some existing lawn for final filtering before it makes its way into the wetland. I guess that's my overview of the changes. I'll take any questions from the commission at this time.
So I appreciate you hearing what we had to say last time, and I think that we asked for a 1-to-1 swap on the garage versus returning the impervious surface of the gravel to a more naturalized state. So I do appreciate that. What has been specifically stated as the public interest here? So we have a waiver situation because we're working within the no disturb zone at this point inside the 50. So what are we doing to meet the waiver requirements for public interest in this case?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, as discussed last time, we are dealing with a failed septic system. So cleaning that up, that's obviously a big public interest.
Yeah, so the waiver applies to the garage. So if we can sort of.
Yeah, as far as the garage goes, as mentioned in the narrative, the intent of the garage is to provide the owner of the building additional storage. So it's good. It's going to do a couple things. I mean, it's going to help obviously the owner.
Yeah, that's gonna.
Yep, it's going to help. I mean, it's going to eliminate anything that might be stored outside right now. What's that?
I think we might have some help for you here. So, Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, if you got something in mind, sure, go for it.
No, I think you're already doing it. So I'm just trying to get it on the record. So,
Peter, my staff report didn't make the binder, so just for the record, number 1676. Through the alternatives analysis, Peter moved the garage so that it's on the gravel area, so there's no new impervious, and then he took that amount and reduced pavement elsewhere on the site. So not only is it on gravel, but then he took the 1,500 square foot garage and is eliminating, what is it, 1,650?
1,060 versus 1,050, yeah.
So it just over. So not only was it on gravel, but he's also reducing the amount of pervious on the site by the same amount. As mitigation, he is doing the drainage of the roof is going to be treated and infiltrated. And he increased his plantings from all native vegetation in the areas where the pavement's being removed. And he gave us, instead of just, he gave us a 3-story type of planting so that it's more fulsome.
Okay. So
how's that, Peter? Is that what you would have said?
I thought I already said those things, but sure, yeah, that's a good recap.
So from my standpoint, I'm happy where this plan is. I actually think this is a better plan than the one we approved 3.5 years ago. So I appreciate where we've come on this. I do believe that you've met the waiver requirements. My personal opinion is you've met the waiver requirements. Alternatives, minimization and mitigation, and and public interest. So from my standpoint, any questions from the commission? Carol?
Yes, thank you. A few things. I just want to be clear, Andrea, I believe you said in your staff report that we're looking at high bush blueberry, but the plan does not reflect that. The plan says hillside blueberry, Vaccinium palladium,
Aha, you guys are being smart.
and the size that's spec'd is 2 to 3 feet. Well, these are more, they're not called low bush blueberries, but they're more of a low variety, and you're probably never going to find them in a 2 to 3 foot size because their maximum height is usually 1.5 to 2 feet. So there's that.
Which would you recommend? Would you recommend they go to high bush?
Well, the cultural conditions can vary between the high bush. I think the palladium is well suited for that. I mean, it's on the north of the building, so it's a shady spot. And I don't know what the soil is going to be. I don't know how I don't assume that the owner of the property cares greatly about planting or doesn't care greatly about planting. But if these plants don't take, maintenance is a really important part of this. And so I'm drifting onto another subject, but so it all depends on the soil that's there and how is the soil going to be retained. And, I'm not very pleased with if we have these little blueberries that are, 1 to 2 feet high and we're putting one every 80 square feet, that kind of doesn't cut it as a habitat. I don't know how that upland meadow mix is going to do in the shade. We have 3 white oaks, I think, that are placed right beside the leaching field. And I don't know when those trees get to be 12-inch diameter, 18-inch diameter, what impact are those going to have on the leaching field?
Would you like me to address some of those concerns or?
Sure.
Or do my best. I mean, we'll start off with the trees at the base of the septic system. Yeah, obviously you never want to plant really anything other than grass above the septic, but these plantings are proposed about 3 feet, probably almost 4 feet lower than the top of the septic system. So if anything, I mean, the roots may migrate to the underneath part of the septic system eventually, but we're still looking at a root diameter or a radius on the roots of 10 feet before that even becomes a concern. Usually when we're doing septic systems, we try to take out any trees closer than 10 feet, so that 10 feet's kind of what we consider to be a safe number. The other thing is, the commission wants to see, trees as mentioned. So without pushing the erosion control out any further, this is kind of the balance that we were able to come up with. As far as the upland mix not getting the sun, I mean, yes, it's on the northern portion of the proposed building. But the rest of the entire thing, I mean, that sees pretty much daily sunlight through the clearing of this building shining from the south. So it's my opinion that everything except maybe the very back corner of the garage would have sufficient sunlight for the proposed meadow mix, and then really everything I think is going to have sufficient sunlight at some point or another in the day.
John, what do you think about the oaks?
What would you like to know?
How do you like their placement on the plan?
I mean, I think it's okay. I mean, what's the soil substrate there?
Soils are decent up high. I think you guys can see the logs here. We got about 4 feet 4 feet of a plantable material, and then it gets into a tighter silt loam material.
Mhm.
Groundwater at about 4.5, 5 feet. So I mean, decent upper soil, and then your B layers pretty supportive of any upland varieties.
Okay, Josh, sorry, you're not Josh, Peter. How are you gonna retain the planting soil behind the garage, to the north of the garage?
Are we going to retain it? Well, that part of the site's pretty much flat. Right now, it's really flat. We slope from 3 feet from the building out towards the resource area. So, and a lot of that happens right near the building in the tanks. So, I guess my answer to your question would be temporarily the proposed erosion control being a 12-inch silt sock with a silt fence behind it. That should sufficiently hold things in place, and there's really not enough of a slope that we're worried about runoff in this area. The septic area is to be loam and seeded on the slopes, so the slopes would be stabilized, and once that vegetation grows through, as with any of our other septic projects, the steepest, most concerning slope would be along the septic system. Not so much of a concern to the north, in our opinion. Very minimal grading going on there.
Okay, but it's possible because from the garage to the wetland, it does run downhill, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's possible.
Can we do something like a concrete block with a non-woven fabric to just catch any soil that wants to run downhill?
Well, once it's stabilized, is that going to be
Right.
necessary anymore? I mean,
Well-
he's got a 12-inch silt sock there. I mean, that would certainly stop whatever's going on there.
Sure, but that won't last forever.
I know, but it'll be stabilized by then.
Well,
Yeah, I think once it becomes vegetated with the upland mix that they're proposing, right? I think that'll be stabilized permanently, and they'll have to maintain that grass.
right, which is, right,
I
so
mean,
what is that?
During construction, they're gonna have to, put the silt socks up, which they show on the plan. And then once they're done with the area for construction, they're gonna stabilize it with seed and so, whatever sort of methods that they need to.
Sure, I'm just, like over time, soil goes downhill, even stable soil.
The slope here is very gradual though, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, and I mean, again, the main intent of these plantings is, and the meadow mix is for soil stabilization. Yeah, obviously, you can make the argument that 1,000 years from now, the runoff's gonna take its course, but no, any properly maintained slope with vegetation, I mean, that's, you drive down the highway, the embankments that are built wrong are the ones washing out. Once they get the vegetation established, I mean, a 3-to-1 slope is doable, and the fact that this is significantly less slope, I don't think it's a valid justification for any type of retaining. That's our opinion. I mean, obviously, it's a significant cost impact to our client, but I don't see much benefit. Even with the blocks, over time, you could start getting into an erosion situation, which in that case, my opinion is, the blocks could lend itself to creating more of a channel, and rather than getting an even sheet flow through the grasses, you're gonna get all this piling up against the wall and, trying to rip out somewhere else. So I don't feel that's an appropriate solution, but I'm
Okay.
see what the rest of the commission says.
thank you. So another question about that area. What do we have for medallions? I mean, there's one, on the right-hand edge to the rear of the garage. And that's
We have 7 proposed across the site.
right. But, yeah, we're looking at the one behind the garage.
Sure.
So that seems to be at the transition point between the area behind the garage and the parking. Is that right?
Yeah, the intent of that is to make it just a visible, obvious, limit of parking. If there's a post there, people aren't gonna be inclined to, park extra vehicles or anything. It's set in the middle specifically, with the visual intent, just as the others are proposed, directly adjacent to the existing parking. We don't want anyone creeping into this grass over time.
So is it possible, normally these posts are somewhere in the 12 to 18 inch range above grade. Is it possible we could make that more of a 3 foot high one that is maybe, instead of just being secured in the soil, that we actually secure it in cement that is, has maybe a little bit more substantial sign on it that says, do not disturb, wetland area, or wetland buffer zone, or whatever we want to say there. I mean, normally we use little medallions on the top that are about 2 inches in diameter that may be ignored by people. And I think if we had a 12 or 18 inch one, it may be something that, so I mean, Carol's point here, I think, is maybe that particular area where people are used to parking, and which would be next to the garage, that could easily be used by, workers, maybe, putting either materials there or just driving a vehicle when they're trying to park, get out of somebody's way. So, I mean, my suggestion would be that particular post be 3 feet high with a sign on it that says, do not disturb wetland buffer zone.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, one thing I'll just add to that is, I would kind of be in favor of going a little bit higher with them. I mean,
Okay.
We set some of these in if it's one thing if it's in the edge of someone's lawn along the tree line, but we set a lot of these that, based on where the commission wants them, they might end up in the middle of someone's yard. So an 18-inch stick coming out of the ground, especially near parking, I mean, it's really just presents a tripping hazard.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna see a 12 or 18-inch post sticking out of the ground when you're getting out of your car, in the morning or at night when it's dark. So I think a taller post would be acceptable, and I would be in favor of proposing that along the whole northern limit of the parking.
Okay.
Maybe we leave the ones out back the standard size, but whatever, I mean, that's up to the commission. Those are at the toe of the slope, so it might help visibility if those are up a little higher as well.
I think proposing that the ones along the driveway is probably to be more substantial and higher off the ground would be sufficient to me.
What do we think about having them made of concrete or stone rather than wood?
I mean, they have metal bollards. I don't know how expensive those are for parking purposes, but I think they could also prove to be a dual purpose for plowing in the winter conditions.
Yeah, obviously those are gonna be superior as far as keeping vehicles out. Even, we could attach the standard or a modified, conservation label on them, but I think the posts themselves they're gonna do the job for the vehicular intent, and then maybe we'll just go with the standard wooden post out in the back.
So what's being suggested here, so we can condition this properly?
Well, I was suggesting some potential metal permanent posts along the edge of the drive there, and then the wooden posts out back sound like a good idea to me.
Okay.
So it would have to be some kind of, so another of my concerns about behind the garage is I could see in winter the temptation of a plow driver to pile up a bunch of snow in the planting area behind the garage. So we want to make sure that any post there can withstand clunking by a plow, and we don't want any snow piled up there.
Do you mean to the south of where the garage is right now?
The way I'm,
It's north.
North?
north,
Oh, you mean where the bollard is right there?
right,
Well, then we could probably condition where snowplow is going to be allowed.
right,
Condition area right now where it's going to be allowed.
right.
So do you have a proposed snow storage area?
Yeah, we do. We, right at the northern limit of the existing gravel, we have a leader showing an 18-inch deep snow storage area. So basically the strip between the erosion control and the gravel. So it's a subtle swale that's gonna collect any of that melt and direct it towards our discharge area, which ultimately dumps out next to flag 12.
What about in the rear of the lot?
In the rear of the lot. Regarding what, snow removal? I mean, the edge of the gravel is right here, so the farthest they're gonna plow is, you know, to where the septic tanks are. They're not gonna be going out back for any reasons. This is gonna be a lawn area.
So I think our suggestion is that we don't want snow being stored to the north of the garage.
Correct.
So I think that either we have to have a snow storage area on the plan, or we need to condition it, or both, or, I prefer to have you say that, you know, the snow storage area is gonna be in that, you know, area to the, you know, to the south of the entrance to the garage.
Down here you're talking?
No, I'm talking about the proposed garage.
Oh, yeah, the issue, one issue with that is we don't wanna be piling up snow on or near our septic system. A couple of reasons. Obviously, the extra water melting going into the leaching field isn't doing us any good. We also don't want any water melting and going back towards the, you know, the office building or the proposed garage, so.
So you tell me, Peter, so the concern is that we don't use the snow, the area to the north of the garage for snow storage.
Yeah, so,
Where do you propose to put the snow that is in that back parking lot?
So it's my understanding that this is the area of contention, strictly just right here to the north of the garage. Our plan, we show a snow storage area right here. This whole strip to the north of the existing driveway.
So you believe that the snow plow guy will push the snow that way to this?
That's how I would plow it, and anyone else I know would probably plow it, yeah. If you're looking on the southern portion of the lot, you're dealing with retaining walls right up to the edge of parking. You can't really pile much of anything here. You know, I could lie to you and tell you that we're gonna put all the snow outside the 100-foot buffer. It's just not realistic.
Peter, I'm not suggesting that you fabricate something.
Yeah, no,
I'm simply trying to address the concern here. I mean, if I'm the only one, if I'm misconstruing, you know, the commission's concern, somebody please speak up.
No, I think you're right, Rory. I think, you know, if I was, you know, a layman, you know, plow driver and without knowing anything, I would probably want to store it right next to the septic system between the proposed garage and the office residence. I think that would be the ideal place that I would probably propose it. So as long as we show that, you know, the area where the septic system isn't an area for snow storage, then I think we're covered.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
Sure, John, the area behind the garage, to the north of the garage, rather than a couple of blueberry bushes and some seed mix, what do you think about something more robust, with more robust roots, something like staghorn sumac back there?
I'm not really a fan of staghorn sumac. I don't know, I'd have to see what exactly is out there right now for natural habitat and see what's that?
It's really grubby. It's really sparse. There's not a lot of mid-story.
Well, it would be insightful to put mid-story if it's lacking mid-story. That's my thought. So something that could fill it out with potential growth in the future.
Right, so we do need something, since we don't have any mid-story right now in that area.
Right, and I guess my thought is, if it's already at a gravel area that's gonna be kind of, manipulated, if the soil substrate's still gonna be kind of gravelly probably. And, you want something that's gonna thrive in those kind of roadside kind of conditions. So you're looking at some sort of plant that can potentially grow in those kind of upland conditions, but also could get wet if it needed to be.
What would
So-
that be?
Something facultative, I think, I mean, you could put, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but
Plethora, inkberry.
yeah, something along those lines. I mean, I would prefer to see what kind of, vegetation's in the neighboring area to try to make it look more conducive to the environment. But, if you want to propose something that is, a placeholder and then maybe look at it later on and come back to the commission, for a planting plan, that's also a condition that the commission could do too.
Yeah, so I think that, I think that's an excellent idea, John. I think that, if we're gonna approve this project and it's gonna be contingent upon a planting plan that needs to be approved by the environmental planner, I think that we can do that. I think that Andrea has probably heard from us what type of plantings we may want to see in that area as opposed to the high hill blueberry that's specified now. And so that may be something. Are you comfortable doing that for us, Andrea?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other thing is, again, I don't want to make any assumptions about the responsibility that the owner would take or not take, but I guess I do have a prejudice about or a stereotype about some owners of some commercial properties not really giving a hoot about the plantings. So I wonder if, I'm looking at 22710 in our bylaw, as part of a permit issued under this chapter, in addition to any security required by other town, board, agency, blah, 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 the commission may require that the performance and observance of the conditions imposed hereunder be secured wholly or in part by one or more of the following methods: a bond. So, any thoughts about putting in place a bond to,
So my only concern is that we're setting a precedent here that I'm not comfortable with on a minor project. We haven't taken bonds against major projects with major mitigation of plantings going on. So I'd be a little bit concerned it's setting that precedent, and I am fully in favor of holding the applicant accountable for the survival of the plantings at whatever intervals we want to establish, a 2-year survival rate, a 3-year survival rate, whatever we want to do. I mean, he's held responsible for that. But I am not in favor of placing a bond.
In addition, they're gonna be looking for certificate of compliance down the road anyway, so that wouldn't be issued unless conditions were met.
right, but that can be, if I understand what I've been reading about it, I just think it's, if we've never done it, maybe it's time to have owners put some skin in the game. And this is a little,
The owner's skin in the game is their certificate of compliance. That's their skin in the game. We issue a permit, we issue order of conditions. They're required to follow those. We've seen many times, Carol, and you've been here long enough that when we have people come before us, they're not meeting the criteria of certificate of compliance, that we hold them accountable. And they don't get the certificate of compliance. And to be honest, the certificate of compliance is something that they're required to transfer ownership of the property. And to be honest, we can go to an enforcement if we need to. And we have done enforcements. I mean, of significant, sizes related to these type of things. And I don't think that we're a board that's hesitant to do enforcement where required. And I think those are the tools I'd rather use rather than a financial instrument such as a bond.
Right. I respect your opinion about that. And this is kind of new to me, but what I'm reading here is that the bond can be released in whole or in part upon issuance.
I believe that you're asking for a significantly more complicated administrative burden on our staff than I'm comfortable with.
It's a monetary instrument that's never been requested before, and I agree, Roy, it's setting the precedent.
I just don't think it's necessary at the end of the day. So I mean, if we're doing some big project, maybe we could talk about it, but I just don't think so.
Right. Like, I see your, the demands on our agent, and I just don't see them becoming smaller over time and policing all these properties. It's I would think it would be, taxing to get around to them and do all the other activities having to do with the assistant planner responsibility.
Let me just add to that the performance bond is usually set using planning board as an example, based on the cost to replicate. Cost to replicate here is not going to be that much. So it's not just my time, it's all the accounting time and all that. We have, you look at the performance standard for what you would consider successful. And he doesn't get the certificate of compliance until he meets the performance standard.
Uh-huh. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to bring it up.
So speaking of performance standards, so what are we? I don't know that I saw it in the staff report. What are we looking for a report here from the plantings?
Native plants installed within 90 days of issuance of the building permit shall be monitored to ensure 75% coverage is achieved. You can change that. Monitoring reports shall be submitted at time of planting and the following October 31st and May 30th until successful coverage is achieved.
Sounds sufficient to me. Okay, so Peter, any other comments? We want to move on here. We spent any public comment for 111 Washington? Seeing none, Peter, I assume we want to close.
Yes.
Oh, that's a very tentative yes, Peter.
Yes, we're looking to close, obviously. It sounds like there's still a little bit of uncertainty as far as the plantings and stuff, so.
We're gonna condition that for you. We're gonna close this thing tonight, and we're gonna attempt to get a permit for work and order conditions that work for people, and we'll condition the planting that Andrea is gonna have to approve.
Okay, that would be excellent, thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna make a motion to close and issue a permit for work and order conditions for 111 Washington Street, noting the conditions in the staff report, as well as the planting plan must be submitted to Andrea within how long? A month?
Yeah, because he has the native plants have to be installed within 90 days of the building permit issuance.
So let's just say you have to have a planting plan, a new planting plan to Andrea within 30 days, taking into account we'd like some more mid-story plants rather than low-story plants.
Okay,
And as well as the 5, I believe it's 5, the 5 conservation markers on the northern edge of the parking will be of a more substantial nature than is normally done with wood, either metal or concrete bollards of some sort to protect the area.
3-foot height
3-foot height
with 12-inch signs.
with 12-inch signs.
Peter was suggesting 4 feet.
Minimum 3-foot high. Peter can go 4 if he wants.
yeah, I think 3 is sufficient, as long as it's, you know, up around waist height, it's, you know, a little more obvious. 3 feet should be sufficient.
Unless we have the blizzard of 76, right?
Yeah, then we're screwed anyways, so.
It was, wow. Wasn't it 78? It was 76.
78.
I wasn't even born. I was just making that up. Sorry.
Yeah, we weren't there.
I was born. Okay, so did I miss anything? Anybody else want to?
Snow management and plowing.
Well, so and please note on the plan that the snow storage area must be adhered to.
If you want to get that revised plan to me before, the 30 days is up, feel free. We could then reference it as, you like to put all your information on your plans. That would be fine with me.
Okay, so I mean, are you looking for any type of narrative planting plan or just a planting schedule like we see here, just revised a little bit, or? I just want to be sure I'm submitting, what the commission's looking for.
I think you're changing hillside blueberry out, and you're increasing the overall number of shrubs so that you can add a few more symbols north of the garage. Is that
Okay.
correct, Commission?
Yes. Okay. Do I have a second?
Halo second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, I.
Halo, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay, Peter.
Alrighty, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. I
Great.
think that's all I got, I hope.
Yeah. We
All right.
got a POC, but I think we'll be fine.
Okay, all set if I don't stick around for that?
So okay for me.
Peter, you can go sleep for a week and a half now.
Nice. Alright, thank you guys, take care.
Night.
You guys. 34 roundtable. We didn't get additional information from them, and I don't see the applicant here anyway. So I'm going to make a motion to continue 34 roundtable to March 8th.
Spady, second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, I.
Halo, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay, next up is a continued hearing for 181 Howard Street. This is a notice of intent to construct an in-ground pool house and patio. And I believe we have Eric Diaz from Strong Point Engineering as the applicant's representative.
Yes, you do. Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. All right. Mr. Chairman, whenever you're ready, I'd be glad to give a quick overview of kind of where we've been and what we've done since the last time we were here.
I'm ready when you are.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Or I'm at least going to try. Okay. Can everybody see the plan?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. So the last time we were here, we had gotten Andrea's staff report and we walked away with a small litany of things to improve. So I'd like to just kind of run through the things that we've improved. First of all, with regard to the site layout, one of the things that was mentioned in the staff report is that this dimension that you see right here from the house to the closest point of the existing BBW is just about 20 feet. So we wanted to approximate that corridor. There was some talk, I think we were a little bit closer. We were at about 15 feet to the patio and the pool decking before. So we took a look at what we could do to at least approximate what's there now throughout that corridor that runs this way. So we pulled the pool about 3 feet over toward the, I guess as you're looking at it, we'll just call that the right of the page or the south of the page, page south. And we kind of put this little chamfer in the patio at the same time. What that did, so now we have that kind of uniform corridor throughout there. What that does is it actually increased a little bit of the area of the total paver and decking that we had, which is pervious because we are proposing pervious pavers. But what we did to offset that is we eliminated the pool house altogether. There was some concern about the pool house and the stormwater runoff and stormwater management related to the pool house, things like that. So we took a hard look at it and said, you know what, I don't think we actually need that. It's a good way to offset. So let's get rid of it. So the overall result is that with new, what I'll call hardscape within the buffer zone, we actually have a slight reduction from what was proposed before by 15 square feet. Not much, but we did not increase. And we actually did go down just a touch. The other thing that's notable is that the pool itself moved from what was 25 feet to this corner to the BBW before to now we're closer to 28 feet. So a little bit of an improvement there. One of the commission members at the last meeting asked what we were going to do for pool treatment. Was it going to be a chlorinated pool or a saltwater pool? And we didn't really have that answer. So we took a look at it and discussed it with the pool company. And what we decided is that, well, what we found is that a saltwater pool, while maybe a little bit more expensive to install and maintain on a yearly basis, actually has less of a concern with environmental impacts and things like that. So we are able to commit to a saltwater pool here. We think that that's a good benefit and a way to be a little bit more environmentally sensitive in this location. We added a litany of things to the plan itself. I'm going to zoom out so we can see a little bit better. We added a detail for the permeable paver. I still can't say that. Permeable paver patio, a detail to illustrate that it will in fact be pervious. We added a temporary stockpile detail to the plan per the report. One of the things that we talked about at the last meeting was the fact that we're in an ACEC and we are proposing a fence where you see my cursor around the existing lawn here. So two things with regard to the fence. One, we discussed that there should be a gap at the bottom of the fence of at least 6 inches to allow smaller wildlife to pass underneath it. We have added notation to the plan to that effect. And the other thing that we talked about was adding some permanent conservation markers to the project in general. So we thought a good way to do that was to specify them to be on every third fence post, the interior of the fence post, so that way you see it from inside the yard, which is obviously very important. So we have added that to the plan. We did add some notation to the plan requiring that the commission's sustainable lawn guidance be followed in perpetuity. And we did provide some information about this well. This well actually is previously abandoned and is just still there. So we're actually going to cap that and bury that cap below grade. So that's not going to be a concern at all. One of the other things that we did, there was talk about alternatives. We did provide what we are considering to be our preferred alternative. And I'll pull up this sketch plan that shows that. This is our preferred alternative. This is where this started when my client and I started talking about this. This is what he really wanted to get to. So you'll see, first of all, the pool itself here is centered on the house. The pool is a bit larger than what is proposed now. What is proposed now is 40 by 15. This was 40 by 20. What I am told is that going smaller with the pool, we start losing a lot of the important features of the pool. We're not able to have a deep end with a diving board, things like that. So that's why the pool cannot necessarily shrink in size and still meet the wants and needs of the homeowner. At this point, we were proposing the hard corner on the paver patio, which was bringing us to less than 15 feet from the BBW. The proposed pool house was not only back in the equation, but it was proposed on the wetland side of the pool, which actually put it only 4 feet from flag A15, which obviously we know simply very likely wouldn't fly. And the other thing is that the decking around the pool was not proposed to be pervious. It was proposed to be concrete or a stamped concrete. So I think that when we take a look between the preferred alternative and where we are now, we can see that there's been a lot of not only concessions made, but frankly, a lot of the concessions made are going to cost a bit. The pervious paver patio system is a lot more expensive. The saltwater pool is a bit more expensive to install and maintain year to year, things like that. So I would say that the client has really, heard some concerns, both talking with me and with dealing with the commission in the last meeting, and tried to reformat this thing in a way that makes a little bit more sense. Lastly, I wanted to talk just briefly about the public benefit to support the waiver. So we are proposing an invasive species management plan. We have contracted with Brad Holmes and Environmental Consulting and Restoration to prepare that for us. I actually spoke with Brad a little bit before the meeting today. Just because of the snow cover, he hasn't been able to get out there to really do his full analysis yet. So we have stated in our response to comments that invasive species management plan will be submitted as soon as it's ready. We've got some rain and some warmer weather coming in later this week, so I'm hopeful that Brad can make it out to the site for the end of this week or early next, and we can get that wrapped up and over to you folks as soon as possible. And then the other thing that we thought of is a public betterment. This stream that's in here, it's a type 3 intermittent stream. It flows toward Howard Street, and under it, a culvert that is located in Howard Street. It appears to take runoff from a lot of the surrounding not communities, but the abutting properties, I should say. It's kind of a low point in the neighborhood. And it's just inundated with leaf litter and woody debris and things like that. It's not really flowing the way that it probably should be. So we thought, as a public benefit, one thing that we could do is offer to go in there and clean that stream up, get no earthen disturbance, nothing that would require a separate permit or additional disturbances or anything like that, but just to get it flowing the way it's supposed to, clean out some of that leaf litter, clean out some of that woody debris, move it off, maybe not move it out of town altogether, but some of that woody stuff, move it off to the sides of the bank and things like that, where it can still be utilized for habitat function, but just not impede flow to the stream. So that is the basics of where we've been. I know you guys have had a long meeting. I'll be glad to kick it back over to the commission for any questions.
So, one question that I had in looking at the various plans that we saw, I think there's a third version of this plan as well that was presented at the last meeting.
There is.
What is the reason that we can't move this pool further south here? I think it's south. Even further away from the wetlands.
The pool itself? We could move the pool further south. A couple of things it does. For aesthetic purposes, it offsets the pool from being centered on the house even further, which is not desired, but not maybe the end of the world. It does take away a little bit more lawn area from the south side. And I think that the applicant's really trying to make a continuous connection between this proposed paver patio area and the pool itself. So my thought would be, for functionality, if we were to move this pool further this way, we would still very likely want to maintain some semblance of a patio through here. So it may just ultimately end up with a net greater hardscape figure at the end of the day by trying to move the pool and keep that patio in the same location.
What about moving the pool and moving the patio?
Well, it's something that
I just want to understand why it hasn't been considered at this point or presented to us, when it would seem to me that there may even be room to pull 80% of this out of the no disturb zone.
Well, one thing
that hasn't been presented to us, and I'm a little bit concerned that it hasn't been.
Well, one thing that we certainly don't want to do is move it enough that we would start clearing more trees in the no disturb buffer zone, right? So we would only want to pull it over as far as say where my cursor is now.
Yeah, if you look at the area of the lawn around the pool, you can see that right now it's fairly even going around the patio. If you move the pool too far over, it's gonna be right, as Eric said, right up against the tree line there, or into the tree line.
So I think that what's maybe not, I'm gonna say my number one concern here, number one, no disturb zone in an ACEC. And if we aren't focusing in on a no disturb zone in an ACEC, then the rest of this doesn't mean as much to me. And so if you're telling me that we need to take down 10 or 12 trees that are, 20 inches in diameter, maybe I need to know that. I need to know what the alternative and what the cost of the alternative is when we're talking about working in a no disturb zone in an ACEC.
Well,
I
Mr.
think
Chairman,
you got that deck to consider too. If we were to move that and the proposed paver patio, what are you gonna do with the deck?
right, if we were to move the patio, the deck would probably have to be revised or removed. One thing I'd just like to note, and Mr. Chairman, while I completely understand your concern, and we can certainly take a look at what it would take to move that and what those impacts would be. It is a no disturb zone in an ACEC, but it is a currently disturbed zone in an ACEC as well. It's not as if this is a pristine wooded area that we're trying to put this pool. This is a lawn, a well-maintained lawn that's mowed weekly through mowing season.
I know, but this isn't improving those conditions.
I'm not arguing that they are. I just don't want there to be any misconception that this is an area that is currently undisturbed. Just noting that it is a highly disturbed area now.
I just would like to iterate that in my staff report, you only have a 25-foot setback requirement on your intermittent stream in an ACEC, and you are asking for a waiver because you can't maintain 25 feet off of that intermittent stream.
So let me ask then, in just an opinion, would the board feel better if we could maintain that 25 foot? If we maybe not shift it all the way over so that we're cutting down trees and things like that we don't want to disturb, but if we could get to a 25 foot rather than the 20 foot that we're proposing, is that something that the commission might look more favorably on?
So I think that the other thing, if that was to happen, my suggestion might be that the 6-foot fence that they want to install not be installed at the edge of the lawn, but at that 25-foot distance to maintain the corridor that you say that we're trying to maintain there. And I think it's about 20 feet at this point. To maintain that corridor through not just the small mammals, but any kind of mammals that may want to run through there. So I mean, that may be something else to consider as well.
So if I'm understanding, you're saying take the fence from where it is right here and move that fence out here, basically.
Yes.
So then the client and the homeowner, any usable backyard space that he would have in this area for his children would be basically outside of that fence.
Correct.
So he would be losing some portion of what would be his usable quote unquote backyard.
Correct. You're on mute. Yeah.
And perhaps it's not lawn. And
Still,
perhaps a buffer zone
it's a
restoration.
lawn area. It's currently a lawn area now.
Yeah,
So
don't make me go back to the how it became lawn area. It wasn't your problem.
So I think that the consideration that's perhaps that Andrea's suggestion here is not only that we move the fence, but that we allow that area to naturalize, and so that it does move from usable lawn that's been as long as you've owned that property, but not as long as this property has existed. back to naturalized area and creates a real natural buffer to that, the wetland, as well as that intermittent stream. And believe me, I'm not saying that this is it may be a choice that you need to make. And I'm just trying to throw out ideas here because I'm not sure that all the alternatives that I see when I look at this property have been explored to the satisfaction of the commission. They may have been explored to the satisfaction of the applicant because it's not in their best interest. But when I'm looking at the property and I'm looking at preserving the wetland values here, that I'm trying to figure out how best does it fit in here. And that may be a bit of a trade-off that you're trading off 1,000 square feet of lawn to have the pool be possible.
Let me ask, is there somewhere, just keeping in that vein, I think, you know, my client's interest is to have a usable backyard area, right? So I'm certain that giving up usable lawn space in the backyard to trade off to get the pool is maybe not his idea, the best idea for him, and he may not love that. What about it somewhere else on the site? What about a portion of the front yard, say maybe through here or something like that, that we could allow to renaturalize and kind of fill back in to give a greater buffer to the stream in this area? And maybe, you know, provide an offset here as opposed to in the rear yard here. Is that something that we could consider?
Maybe.
Is that within the ACEC as well?
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe the whole lot is within the ACEC.
Okay, then it would apply.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, what's the age of that house, Eric, you think?
Age of the house, it predates the bylaw. I know that. I believe this thing was built, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, 70s or so.
1974.
1974.
Yeah, because I'm looking at that 50-foot buffer, half the house, almost the whole house is inside of it.
Charlie, there was an enforcement action in 2015 on this site
Okay,
that created some of that back lawn.
okay.
All right, well, we can take a look at that.
Eric, I was just, you were just mentioning your client. I was, you know, in an ACEC, putting a pool close to the wetlands. You know, I wonder if your clients can anticipate that there's light, you know, pools have lighting, and lighting attract insects, and insects attract frogs, and frogs attract snakes. Do they have any idea how many dead frogs they're going to have in their pool in the morning when they go out?
I'm hoping for not many, or else it's going to look like something out of a murder scene, out of a movie. But that's certainly something that we'll have to consider, certainly.
Actually, a lot of these lights they put up, they kill the insects. The insect's gonna die and they're gonna feed the critters.
Yep. So I'm just saying, you know, there's a wildlife impact there. Let's see. Okay, the leaf litter in the stream. What, you know, how did that stuff get there? Our neighbors have it, you know, using their backpack blowers and blowing leaves and debris into the stream. Are people dumping in there? Is this an enforcement opportunity?
I don't see evidence that it's been dumped necessarily, so much just accumulated over the years. It's a, you know, reasonably heavily wooded area. I think some storms have come, knocked down some tree limbs, stuff like that, and things have just gotten caught up on it. I don't believe it's an instance where people are dumping, because frankly, the only property that's right next to us here, I screwed up my whole thing, now I can't move anything, is the Griffin property, and their house is actually located off of Dean Street. It's the house is over here more, so this would be more in their backyard.
So you said that you added to the plan specs about the pavers.
Yep.
Can we talk about those, please?
Yeah, it's a somewhat generic detail, but it just shows at least the intent of the pavers. That they're, you know, the paver system will have at least a 1/4-inch aggregate in the openings, and then a variegated aggregate base underneath, going from smaller to bigger until it gets back down to the sub base to allow it to infiltrate. So just something to show that it is in fact a pervious system, and not just something that's claimed to be pervious and doesn't actually allow water to get back in. With all these pervious systems, they really do rely on the sub base aggregate to get the water back into the ground.
Right. So what does the 1/4-inch aggregate mean?
Basically, it's basically a stone dust or a pea stone, pea gravel.
What about sand?
You can use sand. Sand actually kind of junks these things up a little bit though, because what happens with the sand is it's less than a 1/4 inch and it'll wash through the gaps between the bricks and into the larger substrate underneath and kind of clog them from time to time. So you try to keep sand out of things like this, and you really don't want to go with anything that's less than like a pea gravel or something like that.
Okay, and so it says here typical permeable paver, so I think we need more information about what paver would actually be used. And are these, is a typical paver itself permeable? Or is it only the gaps? in the joints between them?
Typically, it's the gaps themselves. The stone itself usually doesn't rely on being a porous type of material. It's usually the gaps. We do put a note on here that, you know, the detail is typical installation, should follow the manufacturer's installation and instructions in keeping with the intent shown here. What we've done in the past is just simply conditioned that whatever the final product is going to be, either be submitted to the Concom for confirmation or at least be left up to the engineer's discretion to meet the intent of this type of a detail. And I should note too, this is the same detail that we just used on 38 Randall Street around the pool and the decking there. So the commission has seen this before.
Right, thank you.
Sure.
So my concern is that I have seen, since that other hearing you just mentioned, I have seen video of heavy rain hitting an area that has pavers that are themselves not permeable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sheet flow going off them. It's not really managing the stormwater. It's creating a completely different condition.
Okay.
So I'm not a big fan of these.
Okay. I'm just making some notes.
So, so I think that is something that was on my list as well. As you know, I think that in a heavy rain situation, the pervious pavers only do so much because so much of the surface is impervious, but you know the gaps themselves, and probably it would be beneficial to design this with some sort of stone trench around around the area to get whatever runoff might come off.
So you're talking like a perimeter French drain kind of systems that you're talking about?
Perimeter French drain, as my friend John Thomas has said. I think that the other thing here is, and I think that one of the reasons why we were even talking about a mitigation area is that I don't have the invasive species management plan in front of me, so I don't know how substantial that project is. I'm not an invasive species expert, so when I'm out on site, I don't necessarily recognize all the invasive species out there. I really do need to get better on that. So that is one of the reasons why I did mention, you know, trying to find some additional public benefit in sort of returning naturalized area to returning area that is lawn to naturalized area to try and beef up the public interest portion of the waiver request. So I want to get some sort of sense to you what's going to be required of this plan for the commission to move forward with this. I'm short of that right now, and I did express my own concerns tonight about perhaps having to make some choices about lawn versus pool and not necessarily having both. Trying to be a little bit more sensitive to the nature of the wetland resource as well as the ACEC area that is that we're in here. So I don't know if anybody else around the commission wants to give some feedback to the applicant to make sure that they know where to go from here. I mean, they came back with a little bit better plan than before. I think they need to go further personally.
Yeah, I think you're right, Rory. I think they definitely should look at some other alternatives. I think maybe it's like a wildflower planting area potentially out front would work. Kind of like we discussed earlier. Obviously, keeping the continuity of that stream is important. So I don't know if DPW currently maintains the culvert that goes underneath Howard Street, but if they don't, it would be on the, it'd be a good stewardship practice for the landowner to ensure that that culvert is clear and free of debris. I think also, trying to figure out, I guess for me, I mean, the proposed paver patio behind the, I guess, is that a garage or is that a house? I really don't know. The second building, not the first one, that says existing dwelling and then it says wetland buffer, the box there. Is there a door or something that leads out to the back there? Is that why the proposed paver patio is there?
There is a deck right here, and I believe the plan is that the deck will access the proposed paver patio. And it'll all tie in through there.
Okay. I guess, if there's no need for, I guess, the proposed paver to be attached to that secondary building that's kind of part of the existing dwelling. Yeah, that one right there. And there's no like egress or access to that walkway to get to the back there. I don't know why, it has to be so large. Just my thoughts on that. And obviously looking at a potential alternative to maximize, like Rory said, the extent of the disturbance outside the no disturb buffer would be conducive for, approval for this. And also the invasive management, having an idea where those species are identified on the plan, any sort of, areas where they might be growing, what the species might be, that would be helpful too.
Okay, great.
Yep.
This is Carol. I'm interested in knowing quite a bit more about the impacts to the hydrology of this proposal, how it will impact water going into the resource areas, and all of the many specs of hydrology.
Okay.
And about the invasive plants piece, there are many areas in town that have a lot more pressing needs for invasive plant management. I know this isn't an ACEC, but I don't know that if managing on a single property, I don't see that as an overriding public interest, which is what is required here.
So are you suggesting that we should employ invasive species management practices elsewhere in town?
I'm implying that
That isn't how I read it, Eric. So, I mean,
I'm implying,
how I read it was she didn't find it significant enough.
Oh, okay, I sorry, I might have misunderstood. That's why I was asking for clarification. That's all.
yeah, I mean, for me, right now, you're nowhere near meeting the overriding public benefit line.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission for Eric and his applicant, his client?
Eric, this is Mike. I just want to say thanks for, looking into the saltwater pool as my suggestion. I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm, as far as my fellow commissioners, yeah, I'm kind of on the same line as with you guys. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Anything else from the commission? So I know it might be a little frustrating to the applicant and yourself, Eric, but I think it's in our best interest to continue this, because if we don't, I think that we don't have an approvable plan.
Sure. Yeah, let's why don't we continue it to the next meeting? Hopefully what I'd like to do, full disclosure, is have the invasive species management plan as a part of whatever we're going to send to you. Hopefully I can have it in time, and if I can't, I'll request a continuance to the meeting after that.
Good enough. Just I think that one of the things that if we're going to do that, I really am trying to sort of shift away from that Wednesday before the meeting to be something more along like the Monday before the meeting to give Andrea and the rest of the commission enough time to review the materials. We've got so many, continuances that I'm just a little bit concerned if stuff backs up. And I know we've got one big project coming before us in the next few weeks, and I don't know which meeting it'll be, but that could be a big challenge if it's in the same week.
Okay, let me see if I can get it in by the Monday before. If not, I will try to, I will request a continuance to push it to the following meeting.
Okay, so any public comment for 181 Howard? Mr. Ledoux, did we answer? Do you have any questions for us, or you think you've got everything you need from us?
No, not at this time. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. So seeing no public comment, I am going to make a motion to continue 181 Howard to Monday, March 8th.
Halo second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Milo, aye.
Spadia, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay,
All right,
Thank you.
thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Night.
Certificate of compliance for 6 Beaver Dam Road. This was for, if I recall right, a septic system done, I don't know, 10 years ago?
Yes, it was issued in 2012, 8 years ago.
So my understanding is that this is being done because they're actually going to come to us after this with another notice of intent to do another septic system. So,
This septic system failed. And so they're closing it out and they're going to replace it at your next meeting.
So that is that. So anybody have any questions about closing this out? Any public comment for 6 Beaver Dam Road? Seeing none, make a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 6 Beaver Dam Road.
Special condition perpetual condition to be continued is no dumping.
Special condition number 40, no dumping in the wetlands is noted as a perpetual condition.
Spadia, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Milo, aye.
Spadia, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Thank you. 314 Center Street is no certificate of compliance for, this was a septic
Septic repair.
and reconstruction of a existing house. Did they do the reconstructing?
They stayed in the existing footprint, but they put in a second story.
Right, okay. So the only issue that came up here is, I think upon initial inspection, they didn't have the permanent markers in place, but they did put the permanent markers in place. And there was some tree limbs that were stacked in the wetlands before the permanent markers were in place. It wasn't a substantial amount. It was just a small number of tree limbs. I'm not in favor of making them pull them out. I think they probably cause more disturbance than they would do at that point. So I think with the permanent markers now in place, holding the applicant and subsequent landowner, because this property is up for sale, accountable will be sufficient, but that's my opinion.
There are no perpetual conditions.
Any questions? Make a motion to issue certificate of compliance at 314 Center Street. I don't know, how do we note that we don't want anything in the wetlands? I mean, can we make that a condition of certificate of compliance anyway?
Yeah,
So
we
maybe
just will spell it out. The whole thing, the whole condition speaks of no dumping and removal.
okay, so I'm going to actually state this, so there's no question about it. So Make a motion, this is certificate of compliance for 314 Center Street, noting that there is to be no disturbance beyond the permanent markers.
Thomas second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, I.
Oh, I,
Spadia, aye.
Thomas I.
7 Ken Bain Drive, this was before us, geez, probably about 6 months ago at this point. This was a restoration that they had to do, a whole series of plantings. I don't know if you recall the property, I'll bring it up for you. I have it here on my screen.
oh, yeah, I'm gonna recuse myself.
Okay. It is over here. So this is this property. I'll bring it down till we get to some pictures here. We can start to recall your thing. This was. I'll bring it down to the plan so it'll make more sense. A lot of pictures.
Was this the one with the long driveway?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
can
Garrett
see that-
Townsend,
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, they did a good job from what
They
I
did.
hear.
yeah, he was out there, he had a very qualified landscaper, but he himself was out there.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, you can tell he was out there because.
There's pictures of him.
Yeah, so here's this plan, if you remember right. This is this little circle drive. There's another couple homes on this circle. This was the one where they had the septic system underneath the driveway.
Yep.
I believe this part of the driveway was new. And so this is all restoration planting all along here. Some of it's a mix. There's a lot of plants that you saw there. They were planting. They put protective wire fencing around them. I was out there in the middle of a snowstorm, or subsequent to a snowstorm, and they were still well established, and the cages were doing their work for them. So you can see you can see all the work that was done. And you can see with what detail that they were doing. So anything you want to offer up, Andrea?
No, the shed was also moved 55 feet away from the wetlands, and I met the new landowners, and they are very aware of the sensitive resource area and how to be a good steward.
So erosion control was still in place when I was out there, and so I think that this is I think we're fine here. Issue a certificate of compliance.
Partial. He's got 2 more monitoring plans that he plans to submit in the fall of this year and then the fall of 22.
Yeah, he's doing the annual ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do not have the.
Yeah, it didn't make the binder. It is online, but I should just identify that the monitoring reports are not complete. That's special condition 23 and 24. That's the reason to keep it as a partial, and that perpetual conditions are number 4. Maintain native vegetative cover free of structures in the inner 50 foot. And number 5, maintain permanent markers.
So I make a motion to issue a partial certificate of compliance for 7 Ken Bain Drive, noting the perpetual conditions number 4 and 5 is listed in the staff report, and that the monitoring reports are not yet complete.
Thomas second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, I.
Oh, Spadia, aye.
Thomas I.
Thank you. So we had 4-0 with Charlie recusing himself. Okay then, so meeting minutes, anybody have any comments? We have January 11th and January 25th.
I wish it was July.
No way, this wish was awesome.
I'm with you, Mike.
There we go.
Mike is a snow guy.
Wasn't the snow beautiful?
Oh my God, I swear if I haven't built an igloo yet and moved into it, I'm surprised.
So, no comments? So, let's take them separately. I make a motion to accept the minutes, January 11th, 2021 as written.
Lundin.
80 second.
Lundin had the second. Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Waiting for Charlie.
Charlie, you there, buddy? Well, Charlie's not there, so we still have a quorum, so let's go.
Thomas, aye.
So 4-0 without Charlie voting. Make a motion to issue, to approve the minutes of January 25th, 2021 as written.
Spady, second.
Second.
Give that one to Mike.
There we go.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Okay, thank you all. Just a quick update. I know there was a CPC meeting within the last couple of weeks. I know we said we'd have Carol give us an update. She may only be able to give us a limited update because I think there were some things in executive session.
Correct. We accepted some minutes. We we addressed a request and we talked about a supplemental funding request, and we went into executive session.
And we will keep that in executive session. I think that in our next meeting, if our agenda isn't overwhelming, we will have a short executive session of our own, potentially regarding a piece of property. So we didn't have time to get it on the agenda. I neglected to put it on the agenda this time. So, and I'm not sure we have the time anyway. So I appreciate that, Carol, and we will talk about maybe some of the things that come in the executive session at our own executive session. So now we're up to Tufts Farm request for proposal, and we have Rory O'Dwyer who joined us again. Welcome, Rory.
Hi, everyone.
There she is.
And so Andrea distributed the request for proposal as it was marked up. I know that this went to town council. Was there anything significant that came out of that review by town council?
No, his edits were minor. He accepted all of your edits, more importantly. And there are just a few comments to just a few questions to discuss about the RFR. And Rory raised a question as to whether or not we could get rid of some of the bulk out of the RFR to make it more appealing to create the right balance between getting good proposals that actually address our needs without scaring off farmers who may not be grant writers.
So I think that was an excellent comment by Rory, and I've certainly for me, given my day-to-day life, a 20-page document with complicated requirements and whatnot doesn't scare me off, but at the same time I don't relish doing it. So I can imagine that somebody who's trying to get a proposal together to be a working farm, it might be a little bit too much of, I don't have the time for that. And if they want this out of the proposal, do they really, what's it going to be like working with these guys in general? So is it possible that we can create a summary document that is a single page that covers the highlights of the requirements of the proposal, rather than say, listen, here's the document that you're gonna have to follow. But this is what the intent of the document is. Like, this is an overview of what this document is meant to cover, as far as the intent and the goals.
It would have to be very small type to fit on one page, but if one page means double-sided, certainly.
I'm only trying to get down to something that is going to capture the attention and interest of applicable applicants. So
Right.
if Rory tells me that a 1.5 to 2 page document is much more likely to capture the interest and appeal to potential proposals, I don't care if it's 1 page or 2 pages.
I'm actually staring at the document now, and the front page is a single, is the summary and what we're trying to achieve. So if they don't read anything more than that, they would understand what we're trying to get at. The problem is that this person is going to be a tenant of the town, and they're gonna have to get used to this kind of
Yeah, and
paperwork.
that's okay. All I want to do is I want to pique their interest.
Yeah, I can
Like even if we could take, some of the just even bullet point this rather than have it in paragraph form.
yeah.
I think that might be a little bit better presentation to somebody who might be looking at this and saying, "Oh, I like 9 of those 10 things. This could be interesting." And to me, that might be then, they understand. Oh, that's just a bulleted, version of this. I'm okay. Don't get so intimidated by the document.
You can asterisk the bottom, Rory, and tell them they don't have to file a notice of intent.
Yeah, but they do, because there is a stream on the property.
Yeah, okay. Special waiver for Tufts Farm. So, Rory, any particular other feedback?
That was it. I think it's very thorough. It really lays out what will be required of a tenant and what the town is looking for. So I think that part was great. I had no other comments other than that it was kind of bulky for some potential farmers. I know they might not want to get involved in something that has so much like dense technical language that might just kind of like they would take a pass on it right off the bat.
So is there a way for us to, is this cover summary document going to help that?
I think it could, yeah. If you can like sum it up into 1 or 2 pages, yeah, I think that would be definitely more appealing on the like first pass, so that if you had someone who like could commit to reading 1 or 2 pages into it, then okay, you're going to have to like dig into the next 20 or however long this ends up being. But I mean, I'm not trying to hand it to anybody. Like, this is going to be hard work, and it's going to be hard work on a lot of fronts. So there's no getting around that.
I highlighted some of the sections in the back that are cranky, that they add to the bulk, and you can eliminate them. I can tell you the existing lease is 19 pages. I mean, they're going to have to read.
Well, the good thing is page 14 is blank, so we have one last page.
So 18 pages now.
Yeah. So the goals, you increased, you improved on the goals, you improved on the purpose. The calendar is the calendar. There are 4 structures that are private property that wouldn't be part of this. We'll add an aerial map and the special legislation. So those will add 2 pages, but it's special legislation, so they should know they're working under it. That's just me. The general lease terms on page 4, the attorney's saying, there are 5 general lease terms. You really should tell them to expect this. He doesn't encourage just getting rid of this. One of them is you have to be insured. You are on town property, and And you aren't gonna sue us. You know? You yourself have to be insured. Another question, so that's not gonna go away, ever. But the one thing that is, I ask your opinion on is that it's a 10-year, it's a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewal. And whether or not you want to say in this RFR or in the lease that you have the option of increasing the rate of the rent in the renewal, you can say you may do that at some specified rate. I threw in 10%. Just to give you the option. It's a may, but you have the ability to increase the rent unless you don't want to. And then we'll just get rid of that sentence.
A nice word, Andrew, is negotiable. That way there, they feel that they've got a little bit, it's not a hard number. And if 10% wasn't adequate for some reason at the end of 5 years, we left an open door for ourselves.
Right, shall be renegotiated and may increase at a rate no greater than.
I wouldn't put that in.
Okay.
An open door.
So here's the concern to me, if it was me, okay, because I think that someone who's entering into this agreement is sort of coming in and investing time and effort and equity into the development of this working farm. That if there isn't some certainty to what even beyond the 5 years may bring, I would not want to do that. I'd want to create as much certainty to the applicant as possible up front, so they know what they're getting into.
You could use Andrew's language and cap it at 10%. And if it's, I mean, if we
So,
don't have to go
so
down-
is that going to scare anybody off?
We don't say what the rate is now.
I know, but
Rate's
let's say,
way open.
yeah. So do we think that if I told you that I'm going to give you a 5-year lease and I'm going to increase your lease payment by 10%, 5 years from now for the subsequent 5 years, would that scare anybody off? I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, if I was entering a lease for a piece of property, and somebody hits, I mean, first of all, almost all leases are scaled that way already. But in a long-term lease like this, it's 5 years and then a potential another 5-year option. Is that going to scare anybody off that it's not really the price I'm putting down? It could be a different price.
I guess from experience, Rory, I've been on both ends of the leases, you know. Anytime I've signed one as the, let's see, then it would be like, when I see negotiable, I mean, I always liked that word because it's saying like the landlord will come to me and will come to some kind of an amicable increase or whatever. I've always liked the word myself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually, I want this to be, I want this to be fair, but at the same time, I want to get in an applicant that is looking at 10 years. To me.
There's nothing magic about 5.
Can you just,
About, I mean, sorry, there's a lot of magic about 5 years because it can only be 5 years with a 5-year renewal. There's nothing magic about 10%. You can change that to whatever percent you want. It could be more or less.
Well, I mean, I don't think it needs to be more, and I don't know that it needs to be less. I'm only asking that, and you as commission members, would it create any doubt on your part to enter into an agreement if you knew that there could be up to a 10% increase, 20%, whatever number we put in there at the end of 5 years once it's renewed? John?
one benefit from what you're saying, Rory, is let's say they're in there and the rent right now, at least is affordable. And then down the road, you know, we would go up 10% and it wouldn't be affordable. They're knowing right up front, right out of the gate, what they could potentially expect. So I think that's a good idea.
Or we simply say we'll renew at the same terms. I mean, that's the other option here.
Unless you see any reason or anything negative towards us. I mean, if we can go at the same just the same terms, the same amount of money, I mean, that'd be great.
That's what the Lukes had this condition in the lease, and the commission chose not to increase the rent at the 5-year renewal.
So anybody, John, I asked you and Charlie jumped in, so.
And I guess my thing would be like, I'd have to look at it from a cost effective kind of standpoint. Like, what are my proceeds? What are my profits going to be? Could I accommodate the 10% into my, cost analysis, 5 years from now? I mean, obviously COVID plays a big thing into this, and we don't know what the world's going to look like in the next 5 years. So, I don't know how I could make those decisions without knowing, what my safe kind of proceeds and profit margin could potentially be. I just don't know, like maybe put a clause in there if there's any sort of like pandemic or something like that, there would be a break or something along those lines. I mean, I just feel like, there needs to be a disclaimer in there because people have already experienced this kind of COVID outbreak and they know what kind of, things have kind of come to pass and, people are losing money. They're having a hard time pay for things, the stimulus funds that we're receiving. I mean, there's all these things, these factors that people are just hesitant to jump at things like this. So I think it's important for us to put a clause or some sort of, disclaimer in there saying that, this would be under, normal conditions or something along those lines.
And I
So
think,
are you
I think we're gonna see another recession sooner than later too.
So are you suggesting that we put in a clause that there may be conditions where we would renegotiate the rate period, whether it be down? Or are you just simply, go ahead, I don't want to.
You're not putting words in my mouth. I'm just, talking about it. I just think that, COVID has definitely shown us, what it's like to kind of be on the sad side of the barrel, I guess, for this one. And, I just think that, I think that we have to put some sort of clause in there just to, have the assurance and give that balanced approach, like I think we're trying to give, to the farmer, and then also for us as the landowner.
So Andrea, is it possible for us to include a clause that in extreme circumstances and hardships, the lessee could apply for a hardship adjustment of some sort? I don't know how town council would phrase that.
The question is whether you need to put that in the RFR, or you need to put it in, or if it's something you would put in the lease. And the truth of the matter is that's exactly what you did in the current situation. So nothing in the lease disallowed your ability to do it. So to John's point, you can certainly say, listen, we're a lot more sympathetic than
Regular landlord
doing this for money.
I think that would give the assurance.
But anybody, I mean, the money goes only to Tufts Farm. So the purpose of us collecting the money is to put it back into the farm.
Well, with John's way you're thinking too, I mean, if someone's looking at that, I think you're gonna attract more prospects too, because they're gonna feel comfortable, like, the crab at the fan. I mean, it's like they can come, they can talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, as Andrea says, that's what the current, current tenant has done. And that's one of the reasons why I want to remove the whole, we have the option to renegotiate up to 10%. I'd actually just want to remove that. I'd rather just create a sense of certainty for the 10 years for whatever they propose, that we'll hold it at that for the 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for 10%, I'm not about to, I mean, if you tell me it's 50%, I might talk to you about it, but at 10%, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't want to scare anybody off that there's no certainty to it. And in fact, as John says, we live in uncertain times right now. And so creating some sense of certainty for these, for anybody who might be interested might be helpful. So I vote that we strike that sentence altogether.
So striking it means that it could, you'll negotiate from nothing, and that's fine. Or you could say with certainty, you're not gonna increase the rent, period.
What about inflation?
Right, you don't. So if we just get rid of it completely, then it's just, that's fine. But you can still renegotiate, it's gonna be a renewal. At renewal, you're going to have a negotiation.
One thing, Carol, about inflation, I mean, come on a little bit, man, we could use a little bit, it's healthy, and I think
Okay,
that's one.
so that's outside the scope of this, so,
I'll eliminate it, because it's under renewal, you renegotiate.
yeah, so let's just take it out, and so, I mean, that's my sense, you know, and I think that, you know, when we come to negotiate the actual terms of the lease, you know, I think, you know, having a phrase in there that says that, you know, if there's hardship, that the applicant should, you know, speak to us, you know, rather than default on the lease. So, I mean, our intent is for this to be a good farm. I mean, that's what our intent is. You know, we're not looking to build a brand new, you know, home on this building off of the profit we make off of rent, because that's not what we're trying to do.
Okay, so continuing on, you know, renew, we have an annual inspection. You probably didn't know, because I haven't shared it with you. I haven't been doing them in paper very formally, but I still have them. The process doesn't change, but the submittal requirements, this is where Rory can really make some differences. The procedures, they should give us a price proposal. They should tell us what they're, you know, what are they offering? The technical proposal, the proposals should outline and supply all the information described for, to tell us what they're planning to do, what the tenant will undertake challenges associated with the proposal, and how are they going to be able to achieve them? What are they trying to achieve on this? They're not just here, and we're not asking them to come and sit on this farm and mow the lawn. We want them to actually improve it in some way. So I personally think you get rid of the word technical, but they have to at least give you a description of what they're thinking.
A little bit of a background too, their background.
Yeah, so you know, you have to keep the applicant's name and contact information, but you don't have to include the statement of their qualifications. You don't have to include a residential farm concept of what he's trying to achieve, or she. You don't have to include a plan of how they of their maintenance. How do they plan to maintain it? I mean, I'd like to know personally, but you don't have to. Financing plan. You don't have to include a financing plan. That includes a narrative statement of their financial capability, how they're going to pay for how they're going to pay for their residential farm use, what kind of hard costs do they anticipate in maintenance. If you don't want them to spell that out for you, okay.
So, Rory, the more we ask for, the more challenging this becomes. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think so. But I mean, I also see Andrea's point that you want to understand like who you're getting and what they're interested in doing.
Yeah.
So it is a tricky balance of like, as reviewers of a proposal, we want as much information as we can possibly get, but that comes at a cost.
Yeah. Why don't we call it supplemental information? That is you provide us as much of this information as you think is going to benefit your proposal.
It's optional.
It's optional, but if you really want the proposal, you'll give us what we're asking for. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. Anytime you ask for supplemental information, it's basically required. I
Mhm.
mean, especially with any sort of job interview or anything like that.
If you say, I'm not knocking Angie, but if you say optional, you can probably expect nothing.
Oh, yeah,
No,
I mean, yes, you could expect nothing, but someone who's really serious with this property is going to go all out and give you as much as they possibly can because they really want
I'm
it.
actually in favor of saying optional because I want the person that's gonna do the supplemental information, to be quite honest.
Mhm.
Shows initiative, if you ask me.
It shows commitment.
What if they don't though? I mean,
Then it doesn't show that they have the same commitment to this property that someone else might not.
okay.
Under review criteria, one of the criteria is how well did you meet the RFR? Somebody doesn't provide the supplemental information, there's no way they're gonna get a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to think about it, to be honest.
So that goes into, your income sources, your miscellaneous financial information, your organizational structure. I get those are that's the kind of scary stuff. But you have to have disclosures about any beneficial interests, any conflict of interest, any anti-discrimination has to be there. So it's really the private information we don't have to ask for.
Okay.
Okay, I'll put all that. What about the description of the project? Is that really optional? A description of what they want to do with it?
No, I don't think that's optional. I think that's going to be a pretty. Well, I mean, it could be optional if they don't tell us what they want to do there. Then we're going to have a hard time accepting their proposal.
Good, thanks. Okay, so then we get down to when they submit the proposal, there's going to be 4 people on the review team. How many want hard copies? And we definitely get an electronic PDF. Do you want them all electronic? I need 1 hard copy for the record, but does anybody else want a hard copy? Save them some money.
I think PDF is fine. You can always print it out yourself.
Okay.
I don't need a hard copy.
Okay.
Me neither.
Oops. So I'm literally trying to get to vote tonight so that we don't lose 2 weeks. So we'll have 1 hard copy. You guys, the evaluation team, we know who we want it to be, but we have to actually make a recommendation to the chief procurement officer, otherwise known as the town administrator, and hopefully he'll do what we ask. That's about it. The proposal review deadline, everything else, the evaluation procedure starts at page 11 out of a 20-page doc. Starts at page 11, and it goes. Okay, it's only 2 pages. General reservations is section 10. Confidentiality, other legal agreements. Is that scary? I mean, that's like another page. But that's just like, again, I just think, we want an adult to be like
The confidentiality agreement, that's almost as good as the paper's written on. If people are gonna open their mouths, they're gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
What are you gonna do if they do? I mean, you're gonna sue them? I mean, where you going? You can strike that, I think.
No, I think it needs to be stated. And so, I mean, I don't have a problem, and nobody's going to get intimidated by that per se. So, I mean,
So it's 13 pages, and then, but we cut that down. 1 page is an aerial map, 1 page is the legislation. They have to sign tax compliance. If they owe taxes, you can't be a town. You can't be in a town building. But that I help a lot of people through that statement. And then DCAM, the Massachusetts Division of Capital Asset Management, and the instruction sheet is 3 pages, 4 pages, and it's really small type. and we don't have any choice in the matter.
So Rory,
It's a
so
town
do you,
asset.
do you think we've got a proposal here that if we put a cover on it, it isn't gonna scare people off?
I think the cover will definitely help. It makes it more approachable for sure. And I mean, as Andrea said, like some of this is non-negotiable. Like we have to put it in. So
Right.
we'll be talking about it.
Right.
But the supplemental information will at least the bulk of it'll be gone. They can stop at that point. But I can play with this. Do you want to see it again?
I do not want to see it again. I want to vote and give you authorization to issue this thing.
Good, because I can get it in, if I file on Thursday, I can get it in the register for next Wednesday, which will get us which is like the beginning of March, which means that we're out for comment through the month of March. We are then have 2 weeks, we have to actually open them in a public bid process. We actually have to show people that we're opening them. That'll probably be done by Zoom. And then the month of April will be evaluating, doing interviews if you want to do interviews, making an award. And then I had asked before if after the award you actually take 30 days to execute you actually say you're going to take 30 days to execute the actual lease, so that if you don't choose the current tenant, he's got 30 days from the date of the award.
Now, Carol can answer this question much better than I. These people are going to be planting and growing vegetables, whatever. How about the growing season, Carol? The time you want to plant, aren't we way outside of that now for a prospective tenant?
Well, I think Rory could answer that better.
You know, Rory owns a farm.
Oh,
Yeah, I think if they're trying to do annual crop agriculture, this would certainly put them behind for this growing season. But I don't think there's any necessity to do that, and I'm not well versed in livestock, so I can't say that really would mess them up in the livestock calendar or whatever else they might want to pursue.
okay.
Well, I think at this point it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion to authorize Andrea to make the changes we discussed tonight and issue this request for proposal for Tufts Farm.
Mueller, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, aye.
Mueller, aye.
Spady, aye. Thomas, aye.
Do we have to vote on the evaluation committee?
I thought you already did. I thought you already suggested that there was going to be 2 Concom people.
Yeah, we did.
And Mike Spadeo's not getting out of it, and neither is Rory. And Ag Commission already brought Rory O'Dwyer forward, and she's proven herself.
It's the only committee in town that we've got 2 people represented named Rory, so that will never happen
We're
again.
special like that.
I am just fascinated by that. I just have to tell you.
Do you want to get off?
Don't offer me that.
I mean, you're the one that suggested we didn't have it set, so I had to.
No, I'm not looking to get off the committee. So, okay, so we all set on this now? Okay, Rory, I appreciate all the input. It's been incredibly valuable. I really look forward to this whole process, especially with you involved, and I look forward to your continued insight.
If I don't see you guys later, the evaluation team meets in public and then goes into executive session because you can't talk about tenant proposals.
I love executive session.
Okay. So I'll wait to hear from you, Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, what'll happen next is it'll get published, and I'll give it to every one of you. And the Ag Commission gave me a couple other sites that farmers look at: CMAP and Land for Good. Land for Good.
Land for Good. Yep.
And so we'll post there as well as the Central Register.
Great. Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
environmental planner updates.
You guys heard that spring is coming. We have a couple properties that have vernal pools on them. I know you all know we got properties that have vernal pools on them, but the one that is interesting to me, if it's interesting to you, is 72 North Main. It's just a tiny little thing, and its claim to fame is it's got a certified vernal pool. I spoke to a former commissioner, Ms. Bennett, who actually goes out and certifies vernal pools. And if any commissioners want to go out with her on Conservation Commission property to do vernal pool evaluations, she will take you, and we'll get some certified.
I will tell you that if you have not done vernal pool work like this before, I highly recommend it. It is one of the most satisfying things that I've probably done in a long time.
But you've got to submit your documentation.
I know. I was there. I got the pictures. I don't know how to submit the documentation. So
you give it to me, and I'll submit for you.
Okay. Well, tell Kyla to give you the ones from 524 Depot, will you?
Yeah.
So, it was fascinating. I will say though that you should have some waiters.
A flashlight.
It's a big night. It is literally, guys, it's raining tonight. This is the night we're gonna go tonight. And so you have to be ready to go.
But it is fascinating.
I'm not offering, but Kyla's ready to go, and we'll take anybody that wants to go with her.
Yeah, she does a big night thing every year too. So it's really, if you haven't experienced it, I highly recommend it.
I have, Rory, you're right, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
It
really,
yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating and quite, it really gives you a sense of purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to go, I'm just bringing that out there. You know that you've got a water treatment plant called Red Mill over at on Red Mill Road, off of just behind Wheaton Farm, over near the Norton line. There's a series of wells there. They're going to do a new water treatment plant, like from scratch, because that cluster of wells has high iron and manganese. That was already, there's a MEPA document that's out now for comment, and the comments are due March 2nd. I'll be commenting. This is a PFAS well. They know it, and they're leaving space in the treatment plant to address treatment, but they don't have to do the treatment now because people aren't saying how it's going to be done. But a notice of intent will be coming your way. They're generally not impacting wetlands very much because, it's in their best interest not to. The Canoe River Aquifer, which is, known for its water supply. I also submitted today a new general permit, a new general bylaw for stormwater. When Greg Swan was here, and it's to go to town meeting for a town meeting approval to create stormwater review for projects, new development and redevelopment that is under that is too small to get picked up by planning board and is outside of Conservation Commission jurisdiction. So 40,000 square feet, maybe as little as 20,000 square feet of disturbance on a lot. It'll have to start. So you see those small A&R residential lots that get created on existing town roads. They can be a real problem for the town roads because there's nothing that stops the stormwater from rushing down the driveway and into the storm system, and there's nothing to stop it. So this bylaw is meant to address that. There's also some additional standards that the MS4 permit put in place, that the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook that was written in 2008 hasn't gotten up to speed yet on. So we have to speak to the fact that development is also not only going to be looking at the amount of nitrogen, but also the amount of phosphorus. And they're increasing the total suspended solid reduction from 80% to 90%, which in Easton is already being done, but on redevelopment sites, it's going up to 80%. So stormwater is going to be everybody's life going forward. And that's okay because
That's a good
the
call.
water quality depends on it.
That's a good call.
Yeah, so I'm working with Greg Swan on that, but you know me, I'm the writer and he's the how to get it done guy.
And the building inspector too, I mean, when you go for a permit, he's gonna look into that too. He's gonna see it and make sure, you know, everything's copacetic.
Yeah, so this means for projects that aren't in conservation, it means the building department is going to notice, or the health or somebody like that. Okay, so those are the big things. I told you last week that there's a land conference, land conservation conference in March, building a stronger land movement through diversity, equality, and inclusion, but also looking at ideas on how to deal with climate change. It's a Friday and a Saturday, March 19th and 20th. $65 registration if you apply before March 5th. If anybody's interested in learning more about it, I can send along the information, and there's a small budget that we can pick up the cost of you guys going out there if you promise to secure a piece of land in the next year as payment. You can keep your first son.
Okay.
So that's it.
What about the very last piece of the binder for this week? The stuff from Audubon.
Oh yeah, isn't that nice?
Yes.
That was mail. They're fact sheets, and they're really cool fact sheets, and we could put them on our website. We can play with them. I mean, they're not, I mean, some of them, what would you like to do? They were there for you to say, look at that, how neat it is.
Yes, it's completely neat. I say we publish them.
We can do that.
We make little thumbnails and we have links.
We can do that. Perhaps not the coastal one because they can get that from somebody else.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay. You hear that, Tish?
Yeah.
We'll
The
put it on-
pagination, yeah, the pagination is messed up.
Yep.
But
Yes, I heard that.
The fact sheets will get put on our website.
Very good.
Great.
Cool.
Anything else?
Good catch.
So real quick, just wanted to bring something up. Andrew and I know Carol is aware. So on the Chickadee Lane,
Yes.
or the Flyway Trail, whatever we're calling it right now. At the beginning, near the Chickadee Lane entrance, the trail has been getting flooded. There needs to be bridges put up. We're just waiting for that to be done. But it has been an ongoing muddy problem. Now with all of this rain and the current excessive melt, and I was there this morning. I mean, FYI, this has not frozen in 2 months. We thought it was going to freeze. It did not freeze. It's continuously being a mud puddle. I know we didn't want to close the trail, and I'm going to keep monitoring it. Can I get out there and put at least something down so this hole that is becoming now like a pond doesn't continue? Because I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but no one's respecting it. And the mountain bikers are just, they're killing it. It's getting deeper and deeper and deeper. It's over my ankle for sure. That's not cool. In the middle of a trail, it's now getting wider because people are trying to get around it.
Right.
So can we get some type of trail? I mean, some type of bridge down on it? Maybe this week if it gets real bad, can I just get out there and get down like a bog bridge just to have it for temporary hold? Or can we shut it down? I just don't want to see it keep getting worse.
So here's the challenge that I see with that piece of property is that we don't own it. So is it,
Well,
is it on the
that-
part that we own?
It is. That's in the town conservation portion. That's what
Okay.
this is well off of where you're speaking of. This is
So,
half-mile at best.
okay, so that's fine. So I, personally, I'm in favor of you doing what you think is necessary to keep the trail open.
Yep.
Closing the trail, I don't know what it would take to do that. I don't think we've ever talked about having some sort of policy about.
Well,
what
we
that-
had this issue. We had the same issue on the same part of the trail last year in March when COVID was becoming a thing, and as the Board of Health said, don't close it because we want people to get outside. I think that's kind of been withheld. Or
No, that was us.
That was us. Okay.
Yeah, we specifically said that.
And I'm not saying necessarily close the entire trail because the entire trail is mostly upland, and the parts that are now low that have bridge coverage are good. This part just isn't. So this would cut off access to Deer Run to Chickadee. So you would have to loop it. You could not exit on that, essentially that north end of that trail. But I mean, it's that, or we continue just murdering it as we are. I mean, I feel like we've looked over this like it's no big deal, and I see it every day. I'm still amazed that it's there the way it is.
So how do we fix it, Mike?
But Bridget, we've talked about Bridget. We talked with Chris, and I said, let's bog Bridget. We said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to bridge it. We're going to bridge it. I mean, here we are. We're having significant rainfall.
Mike, do you think a bog bridge is gonna be sufficient though, especially with mountain bikers, or do you think
It
you need,
is.
like,
The length isn't too bad right now. It's just it's this one main crater that's coming off of an existing bridge that you're coming into it. You're hitting your brakes. You're making you're making that divot, and then it's over.
right?
I mean, Carol, you saw what do you think, right? There's enough limbs around there to make a decent bog bridge.
You bet. I think it's a great idea, and I think we shouldn't hesitate.
Yeah, I'm entirely in favor of doing what you need to do, Mike, to get it open. And if you come back to me and tell me that the bog bridge didn't work and we need $300 to put in a regular bridge, and you and Chris will go out that weekend and do it, I'll give you the $300 myself. So
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll make sure I just want to make sure it looks good. So I mean, if it needs a bog bridge, we'll put a bog bridge down tomorrow. If I don't need to do it, I'll let you guys know.
I'll definitely put Chris and Mike on for the agenda next week, March 8th.
Sounds good.
Because he's been saying he needs more money.
Yeah, and I thought that was going to come from a donation somewhere, and let's get going.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some other topics I heard from a townsperson today about some suggestions about trail work, even cutting new trails. So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of interest in town properties now than there wasn't a year ago because of what this year has been for us.
Sure.
I think people have been more out on these properties than they probably have in any time in the past. So I think we might be able to leverage that into some volunteering as well as maybe even fundraising. Who knows?
Yeah. And just one side part to that, and kind of something actually Andrew knows about that I just helped out with. We gotta be mindful of who we have out there cutting and what maybe why they're cutting it, or maybe how they're taught to cut things. I just cleared 2 widow makers that were hanging above a 100-foot section of a trail on the flyway area, and they're just hanging over head height, and their large limbs, they're just hanging it. They were cut above a head with a chainsaw, and that is just shouldn't even be done. It shouldn't be talking about someone doing this. The fact that they were left there just hanging over people's heads on a trail, it was pretty sad to me. They were I've taken them down, took them down, with a 2-to-1, no other chainsaws used, no saws used, just ropes, safe and handled. But if we're gonna have people doing trail work, we're gonna put more trails in. I think we need to make sure, maybe vet the system a little bit. Who's who? Because I don't want people just going out there thinking we can be Ranger Rick and we can fix this with a chainsaw. Because that could kill you. A chainsaw above the head is how you die.
No, I agree with you 100%, and I think that that's part of the discussion we have to have is how do we sort of get teams together with somebody who's supervising people and doing what we need to do. So
For sure.
Mike, would you be willing to put a sketch together of what you're talking about, the area that you need to span, and pin it on
For the bridge?
for the bridge?
Yeah, sure. You can do that. I can send you over some things tomorrow.
Okay, and you got Chris Patrick's email. You want to copy him?
Yeah, I can do that. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
I have one thing that's not related to Easton. I just want to shed this light on some people. Is that I'm going to be needing the help of a intern in Sharon for the conservation department. So that's going to be our summer help. So if anybody can refer me to anybody that might be willing to take on a responsibility of walking and perambulating 200 plus conservation properties and performing baseline inventory services, and just let me know their interest and I'll send them over the application.
Great, I know
You got my email, right, John?
I do.
All right. Well,
Is that a volunteer position?
It's not it's going to be paid.
yeah, you know my email. You send that thing over here.
Can you send me your instruction, how you're having them do the work,
Sure.
so that we can do something similar another time?
So she can borrow it, is what
So
she's saying?
she can. I've copied her before, so it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a couple interns that'd be interested, but
Okay.
not if you know a commissioner who's interested.
We can have a race. We can have a race.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, Milo, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Lundin, I.
Milo, aye.
Spady eye.
Thomas, hi.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate sticking and hanging in tonight. So.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Take care. See you, bye.